Welcome back to the Four Horsemen. It's going to be another one of them Three Horsemen episodes. It's been a while. Had to take a little break. Richard's been very busy with his many events. How was Astana, Richard?
It was great. Had a really good time. Fans were, very enthusiastic to see everybody, but with the added bonus of obviously most of them don't watch the English speaking streams. So by and large, it was very rare I got asked to sign anything, very rare any of the English speaking talent did. So we could kind of chill, but there was like an enclave of fans camped outside of our hotel. There was like a security barrier, which got more and more like secure as there was more and more fans. It started out with a couple of hotel security people, and then the next thing it was armed security people, and then the next thing it was police and armed security people, and all it was just 14-year-old kids who wanted to see Dong. That was all it was, So but it was really cool.
One of those potentially out of context clips in a few years, Richard.
Well, but
when people forget who Dong is.
Yeah, true. But it was really good, and it was a great final day in the stadium, packed out to the rafters, great atmosphere, had a lot of fun. I'm good. Obviously, I got the post-event cold, which I always get now because I'm just an old man with no immune system. They should push me into the White House. Only I had a Delaware to go to.
What's weird is the symptoms just match up perfectly, Monty, with like whiskey withdrawals. All those mysteries of life. No one will ever know.
There was many such cases. Fortunately, whiskey.
Your uncle got it too. I bet. What are the odds?
No, whiskey wasn't the problem. Actually, we could get that delivered to the room 24 hours a day. That was not an issue. Certain websites are blocked there. I'll tell you that.
Okay. By the way, that actually sounds pretty good.
I live in Korea.
I can tell you. I won't say which country because you get in trouble nowadays. But put it this way: there's an Eastern European country where I have actually worked events. Where I came up from the event at 1 a.m. I'm really hungry. I order on the room service like a burger at 2 a.m. and the guy goes, "Okay, it'll come." You can imagine where it might be already, sadly, by that accent. But whatever, I'm not good at accents anyway. And then an hour later, I ring like, "Where's that burger?" And the guy's just basically like didn't even bother answering the phone. Like just like, yeah, forget about that. Cool, no food then. Oh, my bad.
So,
Me and my silly Western ideas.
Hospitality was great. Hospitality was great. Hotel we stayed in was great. So lots of fun. I mean, obviously it's a very far-flung place to go. I never thought, like, honestly, if you'd said to me, you're going to do an esports event in Kazakhstan at some point in the future, you wouldn't believe that. But
unless it was like a Borat skit or something,
it's what that's
maybe
the
if
other
it'd been
thing.
some mainstream,
There wasn't a single Borat joke made the entire time.
Probably smart.
Yeah. I mean, I'll put it this way: it's not like I just want to say. Sacha Baron Cohen is a cunt, right? I want to say, I want the episode to be about him now, right? Because think about this, right? He played a black guy pandering to stereotypes and said, if you notice that I'm doing that, you're the biggest.
First role that made him famous,
Yeah. He played a gay guy pandering to stereotypes and then said, you're bigots if you point out this is problematic in some way. Same with the Ali G character. He played an Eastern European character. By the way, Astana's nothing like anything.
No.
Like that he pointed out to. And if you think this is problematic, you're the bigot again. And then, of course, he did it with a Middle Eastern character and said, you did bigot. So that's his whole shtick. And then he subverts his entire fucking shtick to basically create a sequel to Borat just for the purposes of trying to get the Democrats elected. And now spends his time complaining about how dare people say offensive things on the internet?
I know, it's mad, isn't it? It's so mental, mate. It's so mental.
I'm like the fucking Punisher tied to that chair. Like, what are you talking about, you fucking dickhead? That's your whole shtick. That's your whole shtick. It's like Frankie Boyle saying, well, that Ricky Gervais is a bit fucking much.
Imagining Richard has that, saying like, no.
That's it. So fuck Sacha Baron Cohen. I hate him. He's in the Jack Black pile of people that just need to be gulagged as soon as possible. But anyway, other than that, Kazakhstan was fantastic.
What's
Totally
the
disagree.
weirdest political gulag ever? Who have we got in here? Right, we've got Sacha Baron Cohen and Jack Black.
Yeah,
I guess Vicky Gervais would get a better put.
haven't you heard that? Haven't you heard that saying before? Shit comedians first against the wall. Haven't you heard that?
Okay.
Wasn't that the communist manifesto? But anyway, so
I mean, to be fair, these people, if you
great.
wrote a movie called Comedy Gulag, they might actually agree to appear in it.
Yeah, it's like Tropic Thunder, except the movie isn't the real part. You just do go to a gulag. Hey, where are all the cameras? Shut up, Jack. Just go into the cell and see. I fucking hate that guy. But I can't wait to go back to Astana. Actually, it was like really, really cool. It was really nice. The flights obviously are long, but we flew Turkish, thick business class flights for all Richie Lou. So yeah, it was awesome. Like easily, like in terms of crowd and fan interactions, like probably a top 5.
You'll notice that Richard said there weren't fan interactions with him, which is why he rated it top 5.
They're the best. No, I mean obviously there were insane surprises though. Like there was a Kazakhstan fan up in the stands. We had like two tiers of stands. Right up in the second stand, shouted down at me, "Richard, how's my fucking milk taste today?" And it's like, well, how the fuck do you get that reference? You're not meant to know who I am. He chucked down a little autograph book and I signed it and I threw it up. So, yeah, so there was there were people that were certainly aware of my work.
Surely he actually should appreciate it more, since they drink like horse's milk or whatever the fuck it is.
Well,
they have their own milk.
Fermented
is another
mare's
thing.
milk.
When we
Did you try it?
That's Mongolia. When we got picked up by the driver, they were preparing for the Central Asian Games, and we're like driving past all these signs. They have horseback wrestling as a sport, right?
That's pretty awesome.
Like you have to cling onto a horse with your thighs and like wrestle the other guy off the horse. That is fucking insane. Love that. Fucking would watch that.
Surely the potential for injury there with a horse falling, you'd die, won't you?
Listen, if Americans got rodeo, the Kazakhs have just took it to another level. You know what I mean?
True.
So anyway, there was that.
But there is a part of me when I see them put like a 9-year-old kid on a rodeo bull, I am just like, you are just so beyond the pale, American.
I mean, yeah, listen. You're so but in Kazakh, he'd be wrestling another 9-year-old off a horse, so that's great. But anyway, so we were driving along, and he heard us talking about horses and horseback wrestling in the back, and he just leant back and said, like, will you be trying the horse meat, right? Like while you're here in Kazakhstan, and I went, yeah, man, I'm down. Yeah. And some of the guys had just got back from an event in Mongolia where there had been lots of horse meat. Okay. And Blair, I think it was, like said, we had a load of horse meat in Mongolia, and this guy went, our horse meat way better. No. Fuck the Mongolian horse meat. Yeah. You're in the horse meat capital right now. He was
I like the way he's doing that thing where you go to like the fucking, you're an Italian in New York, like, this is a pizza. Like,
yeah, exactly. He was having the deep dish argument over horse meat.
I love it.
One time when I was in rural Japan, I ate horse sashimi, so I ate raw horse meat.
Oh wow, okay. Did you feel like powerful and fucking important?
Virile.
That sounds like some virile. That sounds like some Joe Rogan shit. Like Joe Rogan's just there on his 5th blunt. You gotta have the raw horse meat,
I was
bro.
in the middle of the mountains in Japan, and we were at this restaurant. They're like, "Do you want some horse sashimi?" I was like, "Sure."
Get it down, you. I mean, Japan has the best food standards in the world. So
yeah,
you can definitely eat raw horse. Yeah, you can eat raw horse out there. I don't know if I would have done in Kazakhstan, to be fair, but we had some big horse steaks like on one of the days we went out. Maui took a picture of his.
I saw on Twitter.
So that was the type of stuff we were getting them, and like I said, it's fucking banging. I mean, I like horses, but they are pretty tasty. So what are you gonna do? It's like a lot of animals, basically. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that they just taste so good.
It's a shame we evolved to think meat was delicious. Anyway.
I know. Anyway, so yeah, Kazakh's great. I'm back. I'm still getting over the sickness, as you can probably hear, but I'll be back at full throttle talking about Gene Hackman movies and that nobody wants to watch and God
That's
knows
right.
what else.
Head on over to Last Free Nation Culture to hear our show, Foreplay, where we're talking about Gene Hackman movies and soon sports movies. That's our next arc. Spoiler here first.
True.
But
Also, though, we need a fourth horseman for when we do the Three Horsemen shows. In the same way, we have Roger Ebert as like the fifth Beatle of like that little group.
It'll be Mark Merrill. Mark Merrill's thoughts on esports.
That's actually it. I want to start using Mark Merrill. That ridiculous fucking picture he's got of himself that he puts in all of his bios and that. Freshly moisturized. Freshly moisturized
the fact you
Mark
just
Merrill
know,
down
sadly,
there,
they'd be able to abuse the YouTube fucking thing.
Yeah,
Obviously, the joke is we should just get an AI thing to just fucking render him actually saying all the shit to us. And we're like, well, Mark, I don't know about that. Like,
I invented
fire,
esports.
Yeah.
Here's the problem, though. I know you will never fuck with an AI.
No, I wouldn't know. It's not that style.
Exactly.
Sadly, it's holding us back from. We could have Joe Marsh on the show. We could have all the greats. Yeah, all the greats.
Bring back Red Eye. AI Red Eye.
You don't need AI Red Eye is AI Red Eye now. Like I saw.
Also, that would be
Red
amazing
AI.
because you have to
Yeah, Red
realise
AI.
nobody could be more on point. If I needed someone in esports to say the line, Monty, they're taking our jobs. Having it be Red Eyes, they're taking our fucking jobs. That would be the most perfect.
Listen,
nasty I could
I'll
imagine.
also bring it full circle to Sacha Baron Cohen. If it was the Ali G style character, it could be Red Eye. So there you go.
There you go.
There you go. Workshop that one.
All right. We do have a lot of stuff to discuss, so this is going to be kind of a grab bag episode of recent BS.
Yes.
Now, you guys may be wondering, there has been some, drama over in Valorant, for example. Waiting on that one to see how that one all pans out, guys. So there's some other fresh drama. So there is the classic esports sexual assault drama, and then there is the Sean Gares announcing about match fixing, but there's no other details that are out there publicly about that yet. So these are things we're watching that I imagine will be on a show at some point in
Considering
time.
they don't even have a scene, it's kind of amazing how much things are happening. Over
Basically,
Valorant
Sean
right now.
Gares released a cryptic Twitter video saying that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in match fixing from betting going on in Valorant's tier 2 scene. So more information forthcoming potentially.
Didn't his original tweet even have a tweet in the thread that said something like, I will burn this whole scene down? It actually sounded like more than laughing. I was kind of shocked. Like,
he said, yeah, this entire scene needs to be burnt down to the ground. And everyone arrives at the Richard Lewis destination eventually. Everyone.
By the way, if there were, and that even implies, if there was ever someone who was auditioning to be a guest on this show,
yeah,
at this time we burn this whole scene down. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, so what are your qualifications to be on the Four Horsemen? Oh, you want to burn esports to the ground? All of it, you say.
But basically, our goal is in a few years from now, we want to have like the ending of the V for Vendetta movie, a whole bunch of esports industry people all wearing a shirt saying esports still endless. That's when we'll know we've won. When we get the crowd on our side.
It'll eventually we'll just get to esports Ragnarok and it'll be glorious. But it was nice to hear a positive.
You mean I get to have the final battle with Mark Merrill? And be like at the end of Ragnarok, we like die in each other's arms, like at the end of the Viking or whatever. Like
the Norseman.
It was always this way, Mark. You were a worthy
Richard.
opponent.
You will in fact fight Mark Merrill naked inside an active volcano.
Dude, that is.
And you have to realise at this point in
Not for
time,
him.
I now understand why proxy wars exist. You can't always fight the battle. Like the joke is, we're gonna have to make it like that Thor movie. We're gonna have to be like, you can't defeat the ultimate evil. I'll be like, but he can. Like Asmongold or something comes in with all fucking 8 million viewers. Because it's gonna have to be some ridiculous influence in it to do the final battle.
I don't need Hulk Asmongold in my brain. Duncan, take that away. Take that away.
Because the sad thing is, I keep watching some of his videos and going, he has some good points, but you'd never want to be represented.
You're being radicalised, you mad cunt.
I know.
You're being radicalised in real time. Stop being radicalised.
I know. It's too bad.
Oh boy. All right. So it's nice to hear that there was a good esports experience, Richard, that you had.
Yes.
We have to go to Astana to find the good esports experience.
Let's talk about three horrifying esports stories.
But before we do, let's talk about our sponsor, Into the AM. I'm wearing one of their shirts right now.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. They have graphic T-shirts.
Is that a newer one? I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. I like their vintage tees that have like the more washed out look. I've become a big fan of these. They're really soft, like they've been washed a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Well, You are washed, so it's
That's true. I'm totally washed, so it's good. You know, I myself am I am the vintage T-shirt of esports. You know, some people try to be cool by wearing their MonteCristo tour shirts from 10 years ago when I was still involved in League of Legends. Okay, but it's a deep cut now. The kids aren't down with it. But anyway,
I'm amazed Monty still hasn't figured out, by the way. Like, he normally bemoans these things, but you are really like, lean into it, Monty. Just get them to do the train whistle image. That graphic T-shirt, even though you are haunted by it, they make some money off it, make some scratch, Do a collab, do the Monty X.
Maybe we will at some point. Maybe we will.
Okay.
But anyway, into the AM, they make graphic shirts, they make plain shirts. I have a bunch of their just plain unbranded T-shirts, but they also have hoodies. I was wearing their light hoodie today. It's super nice. They have bomber jackets. They have chinos that stretch so they're comfortable for work. They have some new stretch jeans that I've been liking. They have every piece of men's apparel, button-ups, polos, whatever you want, they've got it. And it's their Memorial Day sale right now from now until June 1st, guys. And that means that you get insane savings. It's up to 70% off site-wide. Plus, you will get an additional 10% off by using our link into the am.com/LFN, or just using our code LFN at checkout. So that means you can get up to 80% off of stuff on their site. They also ship for free to a ton of places, including Europe, UK. So if you are outside of the US, don't worry. You can still get free shipping to many, many places. And even if you can't get free shipping, you can pay to get shipping to basically anywhere on Earth. So don't worry about it. If you guys have been looking for a way to support us here at the Four Horsemen and LFN, Into the AM is a great place to do it. I wear their stuff constantly. It's great. So go check it out at intotheam.com/LFN. Let us start with Team Liquid because the drama with Team Liquid that happened about a week ago is that Honda, the title sponsor of their League of Legends team, has completely dropped the sponsorship with Team Liquid, which I can only imagine was worth several $1 million every year. And the reason they did this was because a Brazilian Rainbow Six player, so you may not be familiar with this, but Team Liquid actually has a training facility in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and their Rainbow Six team has been Brazilian for some time. Brazil is one of the major competitive regions in Rainbow Six, for you guys who don't know.
Yep.
If you guys don't watch Rainbow Six, I would encourage you to check out Rainbow Six at some time, because one of the most interesting things about Rainbow Six is that basically all of the regions have parity. So it's not like it's dominated by one region. North America, Asia, Brazil, and Europe are like all kind of trade who's winning tournaments at any given point in time. And it has probably the craziest storylines of any esport that's going on right now. It is a very cool esport. So anyway,
also seems like it has one of the better sort of dev relationships with the community. It seems like they do a pretty good job.
Yeah, and they're doing this massive update soon. Anyway, Rainbow Six is cool if you guys haven't checked it out. And so
the Rainbow Six community will totally disagree with that characterization, as is tradition for every esport ever, by the way. But I agree. I agree with your premise. Yeah, I do.
So the events are really fun. I hosted the Mexico City major for Rainbow Six a few years ago. It was the best storyline I have ever seen in any esports event ever. It was wild to be there. Just the way the results shook out and how tense the competition was, the characters of the players that were involved, their storylines. It was great. Anyway, what happened was one of these Brazilian players lost. Team Liquid lost to a Japanese team. And if we are to believe the characterization that was put out by Team Liquid, the Brazilian player posted a GIF of an atom bomb exploding, which is supposed to represent, allegedly, him like mental booming during that game, or a representation of their team comms. Okay. But this was tweeted at a Japanese player that he had just lost to.
Yeah.
And this tweet was then taken. If you guys don't know, Twitter, or X.com, whatever you want to call it, is very popular in Japan. Very popular.
Oh, wow.
It's a huge... Okay. It's one of the biggest...
That's weird, because if people don't know, like in Korea and China, it's not a thing. That's why it's...
Korea it's somewhat, but it's not... Like Japan, it's pretty big. So what happened was this got picked up, and one of the tweets around this went really viral about... Somebody was like, oh, they're tweeting atom bombs a Japanese player, and it got 18 million views.
Also worth pointing out, even though the player is Brazilian, the org is American, though,
Yes.
which is also a fucking relevant detail.
Correct.
And also, Honda is the title sponsor of the North American League of Legends team. So they were literally called Team Liquid Honda in the what is now the LTA, but formerly the LCS. And this had been a relationship that had been going on for years. So this did get pretty big attention in Japan as well.
Like, did it actually go mainstream? Was it on
I don't know
if
it went mainstream. Maybe somebody else, like it could have been on the news or something like that. Like, obviously, I wouldn't know about that, but I did see that the original tweet got 18 million views, which is like
fucking hell. Okay,
yeah. So
it also it got picked up by a lot of. I mean, like I always hate using terms like this, but Japanese Twitter was very aware.
That's what I'm saying. The tweet where someone was like reporting on this response got 18 million views, and it's all in Japanese.
It finished with 23.1 million views, I believe.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you consider that Japan is what, like 120, 150 million people, that a tweet in the Japanese language would reach this far, it is pretty nuts.
Yes.
So we can say probably that was part of what would happen. I do think that the result of that was that Team Liquid gave what I thought was a very good apology for what happened, and they basically Team Liquid deleted this immediately. The player, had the player deleted immediately. The player apologized instantaneously. Basically, they gave it a long apology, saying they understood the gravity of it, and that they were going to do all of these things to make sure that not only this player, but every player was going to get further media training and everything like that as a result of these actions. But Honda...
Brilliant. All the non-morons get fucked over now, of course. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, guys. Cheers, Lucas.
But, this is an issue now where Honda had already basically decided to drop the sponsorship. And in turn, as far as I can tell from other tweets around Team Liquid has been cutting budget, and they've been kind of like releasing support staff potentially and other, I would say, non-essential members of the org, because again, I think this is a loss of several $1 million a year.
Oh, it's a direct response. You think they had to just cut, like they know they can't afford to pay them potentially or something?
I mean, I saw some people that typically work for Team Liquid say that they weren't gonna be able to work with Team Liquid anymore.
Wow.
Like freelancers and stuff.
Yeah.
So I assume, given that this is an assumption,
if it's millions that you say, obviously you can't justify that in the margins. Like, you're not running with spare millions. Like, you'll be up to the wire. Yeah.
But
now listen, I am not one to peddle in outrage, right? Like I think like cancellation, for never me, right? But like cancel culture and all that is broadly speaking an anathema to me. Well, like whatever we're calling it these days, it's it was cancel culture, then it was accountability culture, then it was cancel culture again. I don't even know what it is now. Like what are the cool kids?
Cancelability.
Yeah. Right, But I've got to say, like, I mean, talk about putting a Japanese company in an untitled. Like, for context, like, if you chose almost any other atrocity that was perpetrated, it would be just as bad, if not worse. And so it's. I mean. Well, the obvious thing is, like, I do see a lot of people in Kefias talking about globalize the intifada, but whatever, we'll move on.
Yeah.
But almost any other atrocity would have been met with similar results, and also one that is essentially, I mean, it radically altered the course of Japan as a nation, historically speaking, and remained, by the way, I detest the American exceptionalism around trying to say that we had to drop the bomb to show them we were serious, and in dropping the bomb and melting civilians, we actually saved lives because we didn't have a long, drawn-out ground war.
It's some, like, fucked-up trolley problem thing they're trying to sell you on.
Yeah. Which is
I think a lot more modern scholarship would say that it was to intimidate Russia in post World War II.
Yeah, absolutely.
They make any excuse they can for what is one of the singular biggest atrocities perpetrated in history. It has no justifiable context whatsoever. And America should be international pariahs for what they did, but of course it's America, so they're not.
Yeah.
And that's just how we have to live. But anyway, for me, like, this is a player that joined like a month ago.
It was a couple months ago, I think. It was a little bit longer.
He wasn't like he wasn't like a long-standing Liquid member. He's exactly the type of person you throw under the bus in this context, which is how I know, by the way. Ultimately, I think Honda just wanted an out after 6 years, probably as well. There's other associations that I wouldn't want to sponsor any organization that's a business partner of the Saudi Arabian state. I mean, if similarly my business was doing business with the Saudi Arabian state, because it's one thing to do business with the Saudi Arabian state, it's another thing to sponsor a company that is engaged in the practice of sports washing, a deliberate act to distract from the human rights violations of the Saudi Arabian state. So those two things aren't quite the same. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think more than likely it was just diminishing returns. But I have to say, I don't understand how anybody could say, they've overreacted there. No, absolutely not.
Yes.
I mean,
Well, it's also that,
and I don't believe his excuse either, which we'll get into.
we can look. The excuse is kind of whatever. They were going to say what they were going to say and apologize after that. I do think that Liquid did about as good of a job apologizing publicly as you could in this situation. I thought it was very sympathetic to the concerns that existed, and they didn't try and weasel out of it. Right? They accepted the responsibility. But I think people will not understand in East Asia, a lot, I'm in Korea. I have less experience with Japanese culture than Korean culture, obviously. But if the Koreans decide to boycott something, they go crazy. Like, it's not like in the West where people will be like, I hate this thing. And then they're just immediately buying it again tomorrow or back at that place. When Koreans decide, like, fuck you, they will just literally all stop doing the thing or buying the thing or going to that place. They are very
Except
effective.
where T1's concerned, I can't help but notice, but there has to be exceptions to every rule, of course.
They're just very effective at organizing collectively and boycotting. And there's a history of protest culture and boycott culture. And I think that when you touch a nerve like this in Japan, especially with a Japanese company like Honda, you do lose credibility among Japanese people if you kind of let this fly on an issue of national history and national pride.
I want to ask you a question, Monty, because you can speak to this. Because when I lived there, like, the joke is I lived in Korea, but I just ate Korean fried chicken and went on my laptop. I wasn't really like interacting with the culture super deeply. So you can know this better than me. But another detail people might not realize is this is a mild diss to Americans, but in a weird way, I think Americans are one of the few nations that can see past shit like this, because their logic is like, I still want to do business. So at the end of the day, capitalism supersedes all. You have to realize countries like Japan, like, honor is incredibly important, right? The problem is losing face like that is a massive deal, right?
Yes.
You can't just do nothing when that happens. Then it'd seem like you're almost part of it or complicit in some way, right?
Yeah.
When you say so?
Yeah. And look, I think it was a big deal, and I would agree with you, Thorin, on that take.
Like, to them at least, to them I imagine this isn't like put it this way, I agree with Richard, like, there are many times you see a mountain made out of a molehill and you might think it's just a tweet. No, in this particular case, I mean, I'll just make a very quick point, Monty. It goes like this. I actually think this is a rare example of where the exact specifics of all the parties is incredibly important to the equation. So think about it. You have a player representing an American company who is then making a joke publicly in a way that looks like you are directly taunting a Japanese player, and the way you are going to taunt him is with literal footage via a GIF of his country being nuclear bombed and his fellow citizens, maybe even his ancestors, literally dying in a bomb. Like, that's not even like, a vague allusion to, like, that's about as on the nose as you could get when you do that kind of a thing. So to me, and then finally, I'll even throw this in there. We can make this a separate thing later if you want. It's not like this is where the Brazilian guy, you done fucked up. Your people got you on this one, homie, because if this was was like, well, he's Brazilian, so how could he even know about this history? It's a famous thing, Richard can attest to it, that because America and the UK, we don't tend to do this type of cancel culture against people who say things against us or our countries. Famously, Brazilian esports fans have a very long established history of making fun of English-speaking people by themselves linking to 9/11 footage and things like memes about 9/11. Yep. So it's just, unfortunately, there's already, like, in that subculture, there's already a trend that you can do this, but you get away with it normally. And where they done fucked up, Monty, it's like you say, they did. It's like that Johnny Somali guy, mate. You went to the wrong country in Korea, though, didn't you, bro? You could have got away with that in many, many places, but in Korea, you done fucked up, didn't you? So on this particular one, it's like you picked the wrong person this time, mate. So I'm with you. There's plenty of times where it's political correctness gone mad. Mate, this is incredibly on the nose. In fact, I'll go one further. As someone who literally said Poland is a shit country before I went there and was summarily fired a day and a half later, I think it would not I would think it would not at all, because I never ever argued, by the way, Richard, that was wrong. I don't think it would be at all beyond the pale to even instantly fire this person. That, as far as I can tell, that didn't happen. I think this person actually was very favourably treated. I think by default you fire this person. I'm amazed. I wouldn't call for it, but I'm surprised.
Once you lose the sponsorship, then you're firing the person for no reason. And if you think
then you lose.
Yeah, because if he's critical to you being a good team and you already lost the sponsor, then who cares?
Yeah,
You might not. You can either lose the sponsor and hamstring yourself competitively, or you could just lose the sponsor.
You get to not pay him for 4 months.
That's fair. To be fair, maybe that would have made more sense if it was like if they'd have requested it, then we did it, and that kept the deal. Okay, I see what you mean.
Which is what I was alluding to when I said Honda clearly wanted an out, because Honda probably could have negotiated this well. It could have gone, look, if you fire him, we can do a joint statement.
Richard, it's important to note this about Honda. So I'm going to talk about why I don't think this was. I think it was a big deal. I'm not trying to undersell how big this got in Japan and the optics and the PR surrounding this. But I will also say this. The Honda TL deal was ending at the end of 2025 anyway. That's when it was up for renewal.
Right, okay.
So there's number one. Number two is this. The tariffs are fucking Honda. Let's just talk about Honda's business right now. So Honda, if you guys didn't know, if you don't read financial news, has been trying to merge with Nissan and failed to merge with Nissan. So they didn't get to merge with Nissan. Then 1 week ago, weird, it's about the same time all this happened. 1 week ago, Honda announced their financial forecasts for 2025 and said that due to tariffs, they were expecting a 60% decrease in operating profit. So typically, when you have these kind of problems, it says Honda Motors said its operating profit would fall nearly 60% for the fiscal year that began in this April. So that their fiscal year starts in April. It's May. They've said this fiscal year they will be down 60% due to tariffs. So you typically cut marketing in those circumstances, right? First, because you are going to be advertising a product that is getting more expensive, and there's great uncertainty around trade, particularly with obviously with the United States under what's going on right now. So when your primary sponsorship deal is a American League of Legends team, and you're advertising principally to the American market, then why would you not be cutting your American advertising budget? So it feels
and they treat us terribly, Monty. They treat us terribly in Japan.
So
we're gonna make big, beautiful American cars again, Monty.
And they're gonna sponsor Team Liquid Chevrolet.
Exactly.
Chevrolet. But in any case, I just think that yes, it's a big deal what happened in terms of Japanese culture and the exposure that it got. But also, if it was a good business deal, usually that will override some tempest in a teapot that was quickly, and I think very effectively by Team Liquid, apologized for. So for me, it really seems like they didn't want to be part of this deal anymore, and this was an out. And it's like the combination of these two things was powerful enough to allow them to escape this deal. And even though the deal wasn't for too much longer, as far as I'm aware, like I said, I believe it was supposed to end at the end of this year. It's still money that they are going to be saving in a very uncertain American market. And then I will also add this as the final layer, which is that, okay, so let's pretend that it was going great and they are seeing, excellent returns. The fact is that since the LTA North rebrand, LCS viewership has plummeted. So it is probably half or a third on average of what it was last year when it was the LCS. And so what is the value that Honda, they're probably not hitting the targets that they were promised in terms of exposure from Team Liquid if this was their primary deal and this was a deal that was inked by the North American marketing branch of Honda. So I question many things. I question the value under current economic circumstances. I question if they're actually hitting their targets with the massive decrease to League of Legends viewership in North America this year. And then on top of that, you have the perfect out with something that's very offensive to Japanese people and has caused problems in Japan. And if you had to guess, which is the more important market right now for Japan? America, where they may or may not have tariffs forever, or Japan, where they know they won't have any, they have a stable business, right? So,
by the way, another thing I wanted to throw in as well is when I say that the very, very specific nationalities and backgrounds of all the people involved is key, is even in the analogy I gave earlier, it's usually fans that are Brazilian that are making the stupid comments about 9/11. And even then, it's usually something stupid like just vaguely to an American person. In this particular case, it is an American team member, and not an American himself, taunting you and over something which, if you know the history of what happened after that war, your entire people essentially have been sort of like fucking kept under wraps and have been somewhat restricted because you weren't allowed to become a power again and get military and stuff. And also, shall I even throw this detail in if people haven't thought it through? As far as I know, much like in Germany, a lot of the companies that used to make the war engines became things like car companies. Like in this particular scenario, you're not even just like taunting me as a person, you're almost taunting like our literal culture. Like that is so beyond the pale as a thing to do. It's also why, Monty, the excuse just doesn't fly. Like there's a million ways. Put it this way, even when you're picking the GIF, there've got to be a million cartoon bombs going off.
Yeah.
You've picked the actual nuclear bomb. And lastly, on the thing Richard was saying, the other thing people always forget, because one of my biggest pet peeves as an autistic person is when people don't correctly categorize things. So you know when people do that thing where someone fucks up 10 times, you catch them and they go, so I made a mistake. No, you made 10 mistakes and covered those mistakes. You made a million mistakes. Like, that's not one instance. Similarly, right, when you go in this scenario about America bombing them, another thing that has been heavily disputed by modern historians when you're now allowed to talk about it is even the notion that the second bomb ever had to be dropped. That like that was also like a flex right there. Like after the first one, they probably would have surrendered is a lot of people's interpretation, but you drop the second one as like a shoort of force to be like, we're really in this shit, motherfucker.
Well,
so like
also to
again,
show we can make more than one, right?
Yeah. And so the problem is, in general, much like Germany, you have a hard time as a citizen of these countries ever going, it's unfair because obviously like the initial impetus for it has a justification. But the issue is, if you are then ever given an outlet to channel that resentment, like this, of course you're going to do it. That's a very human reaction. I can totally understand why Japanese people would feel outraged about this. Because it feels like we've gone through all this anyway. They literally did nuke us, by the way, and they've dominated our country for all these years. And we basically are like a vassal state of theirs, much like South Korea. And then after all that, some American team's going to also taunt us with the bomb in a video game. Nah, you know what I mean? Like, I sort of get why that's like, even though it might seem like a fucking molehill, that's the fucking straw that broke the camel's back. I can sort of vibe with that.
I mean, look, thanks for all of the valuable factual context you've added to this, Monty. Now let me speculate wildly and say why I don't buy any of this bullshit.
Now we get the tinfoil. Get your hats on.
You will not require tinfoil because I'm so right. I'll add on to Duncan's point. Like, as someone who's been to Japan, I fucking can totally understand why this would absolutely like be so offensive to Japanese people. I can't understand why you would ever want to rub a Japanese person's face in this particular historical atrocity. Again, that there are things that I won't say that I could think of it being analogous to that you just wouldn't do. And yeah.
By the way, I'll even say just to show an olive branch from West Westerners, so this isn't just us all calling it out. I'll even say, just like with the Brazilian fans making fun of 9/11 with Americans, I also think one of the most disgraceful things that we do, and I've no doubt many of us have even come close to it ourselves because it's just actually considered safe, is mocking Germany over stuff after the war. Whereas I always tell people, a lot of people only know the big picture and think like, lol, you lost the World War. No, literally after that war, things happened, like hundreds of thousands of women were raped in like the fucking retaking of those cities. Like, that's another topic where they're not allowed in political correctness to get mad, but I totally am of the position that like you should be very, very careful about ever like poking that nerve. I think it's just so beyond the pale to me.
Any atrocity perpetrated on civilians during wartime should be recognized as such. And anyway, the point is that this guy trying to style this out, this Diaz Lucas player, it doesn't fly. Here's why it doesn't fly. I got two reasons for you. The first is, if there is ever another country that should be sensitive to Japanese history, it is 100% Brazil. They have the single largest Japanese population outside of Japan. Right.
It's why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu exists. If people don't know, at the moment, one of the more famous CS players in Counter-Strike is a guy on MIBR called Insani, who I believe is Japanese. Part Japanese for exactly this reason.
There is no way a Brazilian person couldn't be aware of this aspect of Japanese history and how offensive it would be.
That's funny. I didn't know
the next part. Yeah, that's true. The next part, right, and it is also, and he got wrecked with a community note here. He tried to say, I was trying to talk about my own mental, that like how I blew up. By the way, I don't know why a Japanese player would need to be looped in on this particular thought process, but we'll move on from that. He got wrecked with a community note that said, that is the exact GIF that comes up when you type Hiroshima into the GIF search.
So he didn't even just type bomb or something or nuke or whatever, right?
I looked into it, and he said he typed in like blew up, meaning my emotions blew up. That GIF doesn't come up for that, but it does come up for bomb drop or something similar, some other combination of those words. So again, he might not have typed Hiroshima, but he did type drop the bomb or bomb drop or whatever. So I think we need to kind of accept what he was going for here. As Duncan has already said, I've seen it so many times from Brazilian fans and Brazilian players,
Agreed.
by the way.
I mean, as an American, when they've gotten mad at me, they do send me the 9/11 gifs, and I agree that it's part of their
Bro, do you want to know how disproportionate
culture.
it is? I've been, obviously not an American, but still find 9/11 to be an atrocity, obviously, but like I've had the images of 9/11 sent to me to try and hurt my feelings, to which I've replied with the 7-1 scoreline from the World Cup. And they've gone, that's our 9/11.
Yeah, that's actually true.
Nobody died in that football game.
Yeah, by the way, Monty,
really shit.
Do you know what's mad? I even forget that detail myself. The thing that makes it even more egregious is Brazilian fans do this thing that I cannot handle, which is simultaneously they are banter lords who it's just a joke and I'd fuck you up in real life, you're a pussy. But then, as he says, if you mock a football score, they act like you mocked their version of it. For reals though.
No, for
like,
real.
they're not even trolling it. They take
trolling.
offense like that's like beyond
the other aspect
really
of this, the team that Team Liquid lost to are from Osaka. Now, if you know your history about World War II, which I am a boomer now, so like
so now
the
you
whole
know,
like the whole Shane bit, about when you get older, you start watching like Fox News and you become a history buff.
I like the ones where it's like you hit 40 and therefore you have to have one of the following interests, like smoking meat, World War II.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I'll say this: if you do know your history of World War II, like obviously, yes, the Nagasaki, Hiroshima bombings, but Osaka was like the single biggest sustained firebombing campaign.
Tokyo was basically entirely destroyed by firebombing, right?
And they suffered significant civilian casualties as a result of that program. There, they know what it is to be bombed during a war. It's not like you could even walk it off and go,
right.
Come on, Osaka. I'm talking about Hiroshima.
Here's my hot take.
It out like that.
It's actually why I don't really like Tokyo very much as a city. I love other parts of Japan, but because Tokyo was entirely destroyed, it's not, in my opinion, architecturally a super interesting city.
I mean, how dare they, Monty? Yeah, like, how dare they?
Hey, man,
rebuild?
Seoul's the same way. Seoul is actually just kind of... There's a lot of fun stuff to do in both Tokyo and Seoul, but like as an aesthetic, it's not
the other part
that great.
The other part to this I don't like is in the Team Liquid apology, right? They have said he made a social media post that featured offensive and insensitive content. Lucas made a regrettable decision in the heat of the moment after a tough loss. He searched for an explosion gif using generic keywords to express how his team blew up during their loss. By the way, if you're the one blowing up, why don't you post, I don't know, if you want to post an appropriate GIF, why not have a person exploding? Just a thought, whatever.
Why does it have the other person? Why does it have the Japanese person?
Weird.
That detail makes it not fly.
Yeah.
It doesn't fly.
And in choosing one that matched the intensity of his emotions, for truly...
How much thoughts this guy putting into workshop? Why is it like a Mad Men fucking...
He failed to realise how the imagery connected to a painful moment in Japan's history.
So he spent the time... He spent all the time thinking about, crafting this. He's no, that explosion's not big enough. Okay, I'm going to go back and workshop this.
On a scale of Dresden to Hiroshima, where were my emotions? What the fuck are we doing, Team Liquid, you fucking bellends? So anyway, and then they say, we believe there was no malicious intent, only a very serious lapse in judgment. Oh, I mean, this is mental to even try and style this out. So,
by their logic, what would malicious intent be? That he plans to nuke them? He's already done it. He's already made the...
Also, I agree that they're Team Liquid. I agree that there wasn't malicious intent. In fact, I don't think it's possible to tweet GIFs with malicious intent. That's not a phrase I would use for this kind of action.
Tell that to Kurt Eichenwald. If you get that reference, you're welcome. But look, I just find the whole thing completely ridiculous in the sense that, first of all, why can't we just accept that once again in esports a Brazilian lost their temper? Shock horror! I know. They never do that. That's never happened in the history of esports. So why can't we just accept that? Then also, simply because the sponsor's walking away, he gets to keep his job. By the way, there will be people that have been fired from Team Liquid for a whole lot less. If you go through all of their history across all of their games and all of their staff, I'd be furious. I would sue Team Liquid today. I would be like, right, okay, you told me this was the professional standard. He can essentially wish genocide publicly on another country, and he gets a checks notes 4-month fine. And also on top of that, you are now going to do this whole media training thing with your staff. Let me tell you guys, you don't need me. I say this as a spicy tweet maestro from back in the day, but I wasn't doing it because I didn't know they were are they spicy? No, I knew they were spicy. Motherfucker, yes. I knew they were spicy the whole time. It's just I didn't give a fuck because what you gonna do? I was in an unassailable position. All you can do is call me an asshole and then have one of your shit games journalists, now all unemployed, begging for food, to write a hit piece about me. That was all you could do. I'll take that all day to get to call you an asshole. Now, as I've got older, it's not even the juice isn't even worth the squeeze for me. So that's why I don't do it. I didn't have a come to Jesus moment or an epiphany. My personality didn't change. It's just a waste of time. Now it's a waste of time, but it was fun back then. So this media training thing, how much training do you need to be like, look, okay, this historical thing happened, it's bad, don't mock the victims of said historical happening with pictures of historical happening? You just wouldn't do it. You wouldn't post. And again, you have to be careful what you even compare it to. But you wouldn't go.
That's almost an offensive implication to the other Team Liquid members. It's like you're acting like any of them at any moment could trip over, their hands roll across the keyboard, and then they just done something. I mean, the others are responsible.
Would you post a GIF of polio-infected blankets to a Native American?
How about
you wouldn't?
How about if you in Counter-Strike, there's Israeli players. Nobody's tweeting pictures of Auschwitz at them. That's fucked up.
See, you've said one of the ones I wasn't even going to say.
He said the one out loud.
Yeah, he said that one out loud. I don't even want to bring that up. Because then you do have a subset of people who go, of all the comparisons you can make, you can never make that comparison.
And unfortunately, Monty, the reason why intentionally I tried, it's not a big deal, but the reason I intentionally tried not to go with the Israeli CS angle is, I'm sorry, Monty, but yes, actually in Counter-Strike, literally Israeli players get some outrageous shit by certain other groups that are also protected groups, so it's hard for us to call them out even on this show. I actually have a better example. I actually think the best example that would because I notice a lot of the people are like us, more from like the league side, not from Rainbow Six. Like, because I'm not in Rainbow Six, Monty, Japan's not like a massive esports country to me. I don't follow fighting games either, so to me, they've never been some revered nation. But I'll give people the obvious example. If you're someone who, maybe because of me and Monty are from a league background, imagine someone who lost to Faker tweeting a bunch of shit about North Korea to Faker, or some shit about comfort women or something. That would be absolutely outrageous. You'd instantly know that that's like really, really extreme what he's done. And I don't think, because this is the one thing, I don't know about you guys, I'm just taking like the ripples of the pond. As I say, I'm not in Rainbow Six, but I got the sense that most of the industry people I saw posting, their take wasn't like, wow, that's fucked up. Their take was like, bit of an overreaction cancelling the sponsorship, isn't it? And besides, wasn't he just joking? Like, and I couldn't even believe how many people were almost like semi-defending it. But again, I'll just say this. Would you do that if he did it to Faker? I don't think you would. I feel like if it was for Faker, you'd all be on the fucking like cancel him train, and you'd all be really outraged, wouldn't you? So I think if you put it in that perspective, surely you can see that this would be really offensive.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously we can debate, what shouldn't happen. That's great, but you can't acknowledge this person clearly. By the way, here's the other thing, Richard. I'm going to have to speculate. I don't know anything about this person, but I don't believe he sat there like that.
No, of course he didn't.
No, what happened was you were really mad in the moment. Listen, I've been mad and done a tweet before. Your emotions took over. Your emotion overrode your rationality, and you didn't. Here's the thing. It's not that you didn't think that. You didn't think anything. You just thought, fuck this person. They've done that. And in the moment, and this is actually a point that we've made a million times, but it'll never go down well. I think actually, here's a fucking quote for you. I think in the modern day, especially with people who don't know the history, I think a lot of people who say stupid things like slurs online just do it to hurt the other person's feeling. They're not actually doing it with what the impetus and all the baggage of that term means. It's what they're trying to do is, I'm mad at you. What could I say to you?
What would hurt you the most?
Yeah, exactly. What would? So I think in that moment he just lashed out like that, and stupidly he hasn't thought through. So actually, I'll just throw this out there as well. I understand that for like political reasons, you'd also probably be told by Team Liquid to make your post that way. But I also, quite frankly, even though it wouldn't do much, I do think you would benefit from just doing an authentic apology and just saying, look, I got mad. I'm sorry about that. I realised, actually, and by the way, wasn't this even better? I really don't mean to make that statement to a Japanese person. I realise now I should have just said something like I'm mad or fuck you or something. But like, I can't. Why can't we just have a basic mea culpa on that? Why do we have to make this fake story that like, oh, and then I tried to scale up the amount of my anger, and that ended up being bloody Hiroshima, didn't it? No, like that itself. I mean,
also to your point, Duncan, just a quick one, Monty. To your point, Duncan, I agree that obviously people do say things they don't mean online all the time. Yeah, people have been saying I'm overweight, I'm bald, I'm ugly. None of those things are true. So
okay. I see where he's going on. Okay.
But
and they always say you blocked people, and everyone knows you never blocked anyone.
Never.
I do find the concept of an accidental Hiroshima a little bit ridiculous in the context of
accidental Hiroshima. That like has to become a term that we just use on the Four Horsemen.
Like the guy, like this guy's coming up to.
He's done an accidental Hiroshima.
He's getting into bed with his wife. Hey, honey, how was your day? You won't believe this. I accidentally bloody Hiroshima. Got the whole company like millions of dollars lost, and now Honda's mad at us as well.
Yeah, we were doing
and
that.
You won't believe this. The worst part is people are mad at me on social media.
Now, listen, I will say, as of the time of recording this episode, I do believe a merger has been announced with like Nippon Steel in the US. So I'm waiting on Trump tweeting out a gift to celebrate it. Let's see how that one goes.
A celebratory firework.
Maybe exactly. Maybe Lucas will be like in good company very soon. And we'll obviously, as massive Republican Trump supporters, all three of us, we'll have to walk it back and go, well, it's just Trump, he's just having fun. It's a firework. What's wrong with you?
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, I think we could put a pin in that topic. Bottom line, Team Liquid should have fired him. Honda were totally right to walk away from the deal. Good for them.
But also there was probably some undercurrents of, economics that influenced this. I doubt it was purely a decision based off of what happened.
Yeah. And you don't have to be Tim Roth to know that this Lucas guy is lying. So there we are. Job done. The Four Horsemen have solved the case again. Let's ride on to the next one. That's cool. Yes, Honda, if you want to sponsor the show, we love Honda.
Yeah, look.
And by the way, I would even say my final note on that topic is, in theory, if we're talking purely philosophy and an idealized version of what the world could be, yes, obviously I don't want anyone cancelled or punished for making stupid tweets. But in this particular case, if I just consider the literal emotional response of people in an entirely human manner, I think it's actually not at all like unreasonable what has happened here, I'm afraid. Like, as I said, the people, you can go check this online, you will never find a single instance ever where I ever defended the notion I shouldn't have been fired from that Polish event for the day before basically saying the place is a shithole and they're all idiots, and then going there and attempting to work in their country. I've always said, listen, I don't think like it's the end of the world, but I do understand why that is totally reasonable. The person could sort of go, fuck off. Like, that's also just fair play to me.
I have
that's
that
just
as well.
Give and take,
yeah,
you know.
It's also hilarious that when you lay it out like that, you kind of like, yeah, why did that happen? It sounds so great when you just put it side by side. And then the next thing I knew, I was in that country. So good times.
Good
Happy
times.
Memories.
Well, this is the greatest segue of all time, guys. Because you know what else sounds great? These Turtle
Hopefully
Beach
not bombing countries.
Stealth 700 Gen 3s.
Okay, right, yes, okay. I've also got some. Turtle Beach, there you go. Yes, here's the thing, Monty. See these Turtle Beach headset? I've got it inside here, obviously. See these two things here? Right, one of the best features of this Turtle Beach, this is the Stealth 700, is they have like two USB things, so you can plug it into two devices at the same time, which apparently is like technology they've pioneered, where it's like cross-play, and basically you press one button and it switches between the two devices. So one of the best things about this is you can essentially multitask, like while you're, like you could be listening to this podcast while also you have like you're playing your Xbox, or you could be on the PC and then you could take a phone call. It's like there's so many actual like details with this that are excellent.
It's actually crazy. So first off, you guys can read any review of Turtle Beach. They've been known for excellent sound quality for a long time. So, I mean, just read other reviews of audiophiles who will tell you that these Stealth 700s are amazing. They sound great. They're also super comfortable. But like Thorin's saying, so
by the way, the build quality is one of the best details. They're not at all flimsy. And I always tell people this, Monty. One of the things I hated back in the day about gaming headsets was they always used to make the actual can part, I don't know what the actual term there is, too small, and it would sit on my ears. I have a big head, as you can imagine, and that would actually annoy me. This perfectly goes all the way over, and even just that alone almost gives it like a mini sound, like deafening effect. It's actually really good quality,
Yeah, and so like Thorin's saying, like I have one plugged into my PlayStation, the USB, and then I have one plugged into my PC, and it does simultaneous like Bluetooth USB or Bluetooth connection. So what I can do is put this on, listen to my PC, listen to a podcast, switch it to my PlayStation, and have the podcast keep playing. Or you could have a Discord call while you're playing PlayStation or whatever with your friends.
All the while ignoring your children, your wife.
That's me.
Also, by the way, I'll tell you a detail that I actually think is a banger, which is if anyone knows gaming headsets, one of the biggest problems gaming headsets have, it's actually like a hidden secret of our industry, is the microphones. Because normally, that's why you've seen, I won't say the brands, but you've seen a lot of pro gamers with a headset here and a second headset with a mic. That's because his gaming headset, the mic was too bad, so he's using a different headset's mic, but he wants to look like he's... Now, I can tell you, this also has tech in it, which has AI noise reduction stuff on the mic, so if you have a teammate, you don't have to worry about the idea that it actually has a thing that like takes a lot of that out, because obviously you can filter out background sound, so that's another like mega feature that's just already in it. Like, it's actually like low-key for the price point. This is actually a bag of headset.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, if you're wondering why we're not wearing them, it's because these don't have a wired option, and we have to, when we're making content, hear ourselves. This is also a Turtle Beach headset. This is the Atlas Air. This is a ultralight open ear, so it lets sound through. And this has a wired option, which is why I'm using this one right now. It is also wireless, so you can do either way. But I use the Stealth 700 whenever I'm not making content. It's my preferred headset for gaming.
Also, I believe they also, this is a key detail people get wrong as well, it's not just a headphone company. They also make like every other type of thing you could want, pretty much every other type of peripheral controller. So it's not just, so actually the deal for this, like the Monty's going to give you the code, you can use it on everything on the site, I believe.
Yeah, it's really great. They have... I actually, this is their mouse too. This is the Cone Air 2, which if you have larger hands or you like a wider mouse is great. They've got keyboards. They have flight sticks. They have driver sim pedals and wheels. They have a brand new leverless fight stick, which I've talked to some people in the FGC who say the quality is excellent on that. They've got tons of controllers that you can use on your PC and Xbox. So anything you want. That's what the code will apply to for you guys. So they've been a great sponsor for us. Head to turtlebeach.com and use code HORSEMAN. That's horseman singular, horse MAN, for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with promo code HORSEMAN. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. You can get the ultimate immersive gaming experience with Turtle Beach today. So,
by the way, that latter part might sound like a throw-in, but actually, if you do mention specifically that you got it from like Last Nation or Saw the Horseman, that will really help. I'm telling you.
Thank you very much if you guys do that. So they got a lot of great gear.
Shout out to anyone who gets it.
Let us talk about our next topic today. I never thought we would be discussing GeoGuessr on famous esport. The Four Horsemen, but
listen, I've already covered them on my channel.
Look, GeoGuessr's cool. Like, don't get me wrong. I think it's
I
amazing.
don't know about that. I can't. I'm going to be a boomer on this one. I can't even get in on that. Listen, here's the reason why. Because I am autistic, so it's like all you're doing is like a super autism contest. Like, yeah, okay. Oh, saw a brush. Is that the side of Mason and Mount? Like, the fuck, yeah. Listen, we can all fucking every X-Men.
Why don't you? Why don't you know? If you bloody hell, if you're so autistic, Duncan, why don't you enter?
I should.
You know,
here's the difference, though. I wouldn't do it, Geo. If you did one, all right, you ready? I could do the shittest version of it. If you did a thing where you show me like 50 square pixels of a Wikipedia page, I could tell you all about that player.
Imagine that, GeoGuessr. Start a whole new fucking genre.
Because here's what I don't get. I will admit I don't know much about a sport. I only know that one really famous guy who just sits there,
Rainbow,
like the numbers Mason, and he's just like, and they just show him like a piece of gravel, and he's like, your mother's house that you grew up in when you were 4, and you're like, it's just like bad Sherlock writing. Like, how could you know that? Like, and then he's right again. It's like. It almost looks.
I mean, I think the funniest joke I saw about that Rainbow guy who actually, I mean, they've started to. It wasn't enough that they made GeoGuessr, you know, very obscure places. Now they have to show him like 1/4 of a picture for like a quarter second, and he can guess from that. So it's just like, it just like blinks on the screen.
I know.
So the joke,
by the way,
joke somebody
essentially,
made,
Monty, I'm less interested in GeoGuessr, more about this fucking guy.
I mean,
Who is he?
right?
Is he fucking Magneto or something? Who is this guy?
So the funniest joke that I saw him was I saw somebody say like the CIA should have used him to find Bin Laden because it would have been over in 5 minutes.
Yeah, dude.
Now the obvious joke, Richard.
Yeah,
is, I don't
let's
believe
do
it was
it.
not knowing maybe where he was. You know, that was, and even worse, the obvious joke is this, Richard. When the GeoGuessr guy would tell them, I'd just like to see the face of the guy at Langley Monty go, "Oh wow, really? He's there? Oh my god!" I'll immediately tell them to go and pick him up.
Here's the real joke. The GeoGuessr guy knows where he is, goes there, and he's like, "Wait, what are all those CIA agents? What do you mean he's already dead?"
Okay.
He's like the first guy who went up in the fucking book depository. There's no way. There's no way.
So anyway, how this relates to esports is that they have.
By the way, Richard, you have just made me realise, how has that never happened? I don't know if it needs to be a full feature film. Could be a Twilight Zone episode. Yeah. Why is there not a piece of media? You're right. I need a media that follows the first guy who breaks into that room in the book depository and goes, "There's no one in here. There's a rifle." You know, like, you can imagine how many different angles we can do with this, Richard. That's amazing content right there. That is
also, we can weave the two storylines and be like, "Oh, we've got to throw Oswald's body into the sea to respect this
like,
religious beliefs."
It's the equivalent of, I've heard there actually is like a Star Wars Extended Universe story that is about, you'll like this, Monty, that's from the perspective of the like Emperor's guards seeing like Luke go in the Return of the Jedi, go in with Vader into Palpatine's chamber, then come out with a hobbled Vader. No, it's the idea of what their perspective was. Like, oh, we're not in there, like, because obviously he goes in there like into prison, doesn't he? Then comes out with like Vader, then Palpatine's dead. Like, essentially we need like the version of that. We need like the other perspective.
Great.
Sounds fire.
So
anyway, back to GeoGuessr.
GeoGuessr.
As you can see, I really hate this topic and don't give a fuck about GeoGuessr, so I'm going to make it about everything except GeoGuessr.
Once again, you are talking about the Kennedy assassination.
Don't worry about it. Now, you can all open
again.
best evidence to page 742. You'll see. Bullet ricocheted,
So why we're talking about GeoGuessr on the Four Horsemen is that GeoGuessr has said that it was announced as a title for the EWC, and they have now announced that they will not be in the EWC. I don't think it's because they are particularly virtuous, because what happened is prior to them announcing they weren't going to be in the EWC, all of the best maps are made by community members, and all of those map makers in the community refused to have their maps used. And so they kind of held the game hostage. And so GeoGuessr had to say that they weren't actually having a competition because they didn't have any good maps to use for said competition. So I'm not going to say GeoGuessr did the right thing out of their own heart, but shout out to the pressure that the community itself put on them to say, fuck this.
Oh, wait a minute, Monty. Oh, I'm so confused right now because it's always been presented as like Riot would have to be the one that would have to stop the game. But what you're saying, Monty, is if all those people who individually said, well, what can I do? I'm just little me, a team or a player. You mean if everyone had banded together and all come out and said they would work with it, you'd almost put a sort of influence over the game there, which might make them act on your behalf. That's a concept is very interesting, but let's never revisit it in the context of anything else. Glad we could see that in action.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Look, that's definitely true. Although I will say, like, the way it's framed is that GeoGuessr definitely couldn't have pivoted and done something else. They probably could have done. They probably could have still been involved in some capacity. You have to understand that GeoGuessr being in the Esports World Cup to begin with, they weren't like a fully fledged game. What happened in the competition didn't contribute towards the club championship in any way.
Oh, right.
It was just another way of the Saudi Arabian state essentially broadening its scale of influence. And GeoGuessr is, bizarrely, it's more popular than you think it would be.
But it is, if someone's from Counter-Strike, the only reason I even know about it is because Launders actually worked the event as talent at some point in time. Actually, CS talent, Launders worked it,
I mean, GeoGuessr is one of those, it sounds insane, but in the same way that, Excel spreadsheet esports exists and is, again, way more...
Farming Simulator and all that shit.
Way more,
a few mad ones.
All of these things are way more popular than you think they would be.
And I'll always make this point, Richard. I will always offer this olive branch as someone who comes from Quake, where you are a fucking, robot demon flying through a spaceship with a rocket launcher. I'll always point this out. I actually did one famously on a By the Numbers episode, Monty, laugh with Richard, when I saw Farming Simulator, that they have, a pick ban veto, and he was vetoing the tractor.
You've got to get the John Deere out. Get rid of it. It's too strong.
But the problem is, Monty, in the moment I even said it on the show, I had that horrible realization that, post-nut clarity of, wait a minute, that just is what we're doing in Counter-Strike if you're not from Counter-Strike. If you come in and you're, not from CS, and you see me going mental that someone picked Vertigo instead of... That, it may as well be me arguing about the John Deere tractor versus the combine harvester. It's just as nerdy and stupid.
That's why I've never been snooty about it. But anyway, so the one detail is that, first of all, it wasn't contributing to the club points or whatever. Oh, okay. But the other aspect, and this is another important detail, was GeoGuessr were essentially going to use the Esports World Cup to have a tournament that was going to be a wild card for the winner to get into the official GeoGuessr World Cup. So you have to think of it like it was a roadshow event, essentially. Okay. It wasn't like an official Riyadh ordained fucking, kind of competition like that. It was essentially a partnership to get GeoGuessr to test the waters of being involved with the Esports World Cup with a view to a future partnership. And that's what makes, by the way, the fact that the community absolutely put their foot down right out of the gate even more impressive, because this was it's not really high stakes. It's barely going to be mentioned. This is just a little handshake behind closed doors to see how we can mutually benefit each other. It's not going to be pushed front and center. And I will also add, probably if you want to sports wash, GeoGuessr is not really achieving that goal in that sense. But the community said absolutely no. And I've got the statement here, if you'll indulge me reading it, because I think it's important. It's one of the better crafted statements I've ever heard in regards to the whole sports washing stuff. It says, and by the way, it was a joint signed statement from all of the popular map makers. We, the creators of a considerable share of GeoGuessr's most popular maps, have decided to make our maps unplayable in protest of GeoGuesser's decision to host the World Championship wildcard tournament at the Esports World Cup in Riyadh. The EWC is a sports washing tool used by the government of Saudi Arabia to distract from and conceal its horrific human rights record. Groups targeted by the government include women, LGBTQ people, apostates and atheists, political dissenters, migrant workers in the kafala system, religious minorities, and many others. See, they have an understanding of how broad the persecution and the problem is. The subjugation of these groups is extensive and pervasive. Members of these groups are routinely subjected to discrimination, imprisonment, torture, and even public executions. These severe human rights violations are well documented and indisputable. By participating in the Esports World Cup, GeoGuessr is contributing to that sports washing agenda, which is designed to take attention away from Saudi Arabia's human rights violations. The GeoGuessr community is diverse, includes many members of groups that will be harshly persecuted were they to live in Saudi Arabia. In solidarity with those currently residing in Saudi Arabia, you see, Team Liquid, it's not enough to do it for the Americans. You have to show solidarity to the natives of Saudi Arabia as well, something that evidently never crossed your mind, but whatever. In solidarity with those currently residing in Saudi Arabia while being subject to oppression, as well as members of the community who would feel and be unsafe attending the tournament in Riyadh, we've decided to black out our maps by replacing all their previous locations with random garbage locations, therefore rendering them unplayable. And that's actually a key component of this. If GeoGuessr had somehow tried to go ahead and roll the dice on a lawsuit, it wouldn't have been practical because they'd blacked out the map, so you just couldn't have a game of GeoGuessr.
Dude, I love that the community did this and the map makers just all got together and pulled this. Awesome.
Wait till the last line. It's straight fire. This blackout includes dozens of creators and their maps, including a super majority of the most popular, competitively relevant world maps. It will continue until we see action from GeoGuessr. Specifically, we demand that GeoGuessr cancels its wildcard event in Saudi Arabia and commits to not hosting any events there as long as it continues its oppressive regime. You don't play games with human rights. Thank you for reading. So...
By the way, bang a line at the end.
Yeah,
what a great slogan.
Absolutely.
What a great slogan.
Maybe if anyone else in esports would give a fuck about human rights, spoiler, you don't. When human rights can raise you 20 million from a VC group, you will pay lip service to it, but your actions prove you do not. Maybe that could have become your phrase. Maybe, you don't play games with human rights. What a great slogan. But no one else has any interest. It took the Checks Notes GeoGuessr community to find the pulse of morality that is barely beating in competitive gaming.
Jesus. Who would have guessed it was GeoGuessr, guys?
Now, the knock-on effect of that was it did make GeoGuessr put out an announcement. GeoGuessr did say this was a message from the CEO and co-founder, and it said, "Hi everyone, I've seen your reaction." It's the classic. We've noticed your reactions, yeah, but you knew going in what the reaction was likely to be, as does everyone that does business with the Saudi Arabian state. I've seen your reactions over the past few days regarding our decision to participate in the Esports World Cup in Riyadh. When we made that decision, it was with positive intentions to engage with our community in the Middle East. I want to just remind way back when this all started a few years ago, I said, by the way, they will always try and tell you you're the bigot for not allowing them to go in the Middle East and go and serve those fans. They would always use that.
Well, that's always the argument, is that we have to bend ourselves because these people are underserved by, let me check this, video games. And it's very ethically important that they play video games. And that actually, I know we said all of this stuff in the past, like we support, the gay community and we have all these pride celebrations, but it turns out that that's just actually less important than making sure that people in the Middle East who may disagree with that play our video games. So it isn't the real bigotry that they can't play video games. Isn't that the real bigotry after all?
And then they go, we wanted to spread GeoGuessr's core mission of letting everyone explore the world. Since Erland, Anton, and I... Hard to do that when you're in a fucking prison, by the way. Hard to do that when you've been thrown off a building or stoned to death, but whatever. Since Erland, Anton, and I founded GeoGuessr in 2013, we've always strived to be a community-first game. Everyone here at the, Duncan will love this, Stockholm office, oh, you Swedes, the most right-on people in the fucking world. Of course you are. Stockholm office is a passionate GeoGuessr fan, doing our best to build something meaningful with you and for you. That said, you, our community, have made it clear this decision does not align with what GeoGuessr stands for. So when you tell us we've got it wrong, we take it seriously. That's why we've made the decision to withdraw from participating in the Esports World Cup in Riyadh. We will come back with information on how the wildcards will be distributed as soon as possible. Thank you for speaking up and sharing your thoughts. Now, I will add, not in that statement is a pledge to not work with them in the future, because spoiler, they are what they are now going to do, and I will prepare the GeoGuessr community. I imagine probably one or two of you will find.
How are they going to get out of this? Come on.
Here's what they're going to do. They are going to now make their own maps.
Perfect.
They are going to make their own maps.
Because now nobody can hold them hostage, right?
Yes, they will probably bribe one or two of the creators and test their mettle with money. And they will, if that fails, they will make their own maps. And then next year, when the Esports World Cup comes rolling around into town, they will be playing the, quote, official GeoGuessr maps at the World Cup. Probably ones, by the way, that might even be made in conjunction with the Saudi Arabian government, just to make sure there's nothing a little bit problematic that could
maybe change how like Yemen's shown and stuff, Richard.
Yeah,
there's all sorts of interesting things you could do in there.
Yeah, exactly.
We know the Middle East will look.
Yeah. So obviously that's where they go here. They haven't made a pledge to never work with the Esports World Cup. They will work with the Esports World Cup.
Oh, they just announced they're being bought by the Saudis tomorrow or something.
Yeah.
One of those two.
I mean, that's another way the Saudis could get around it.
Yeah.
The Saudis, they've done this with multiple games development companies. They could literally just buy GeoGuessr if they wanted to. Put it this way, they would do that if it was of cultural importance.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Richard. Believe it or not, I actually think that's why this is an interesting case. Because as you say, obviously this isn't quite the scale of League of Legends and stuff like that. But that's in some ways why you actually want to make sure this one's fixed if you're the Saudis.
Yep.
You don't want to let the descent start as the little tiny flame. That gets fanned into the giant forest fire. So you take care of this one now and reverse that decision, and then you don't have to worry about the bigger people going the other way, right? If you just buy them up, or as you say, make your own maps, problem solved.
Yeah, and so I will actually be watching this with great interest moving forward, because as Duncan says, it's a very interesting test case as to what will happen for a lot of the smaller games. Like, by the way, I mean, Riot, probably the biggest developer involved directly with it, they've totally acquiesced and said, yeah, you can run all of our games. Famously a company that were like, no,
the most egregious thing will be if Riot allows Game Changers to be run there, which we know the Saudis have been trying to push.
As I published yesterday in an article about ESL financial records, not related to this episode, but within that, there was basically a source that I was discussing the context of the finances and the cost-cutting exercises that they're going in. They are basically now saying we must in some way get ESL Impact involved with the Esports World Cup, because...
And these are the women's leagues, guys, just context. Game Changers is the Riot's women's tournament, and ESL Impact is the ESL women's tournament.
Yes,
technically they're for like marginalized groups, but originally they were called women's leagues.
Yes, and basically I've been told it is the same. They have their eye on Game Changers. They consider that the most important aspect of the sports washing exercise is not just to obscure the human rights violations, but also to show genuine progress in the region. Which again, if you wanted to do that, you could stop imprisoning the women's rights.
Yeah, I will say, Richard, that is one thing I will always push back against, is they will do the thing, like I've referenced in the past, they'll let like Theresa May go there and not wear a headdress. Let the people out of the prison then. Tell you what, if you want to make a decision, let's fucking double down. Let's let some people out of prison. No, what you'll do is this, you'll let Trump go there and shake a bunch of women's hands, but then you'll still put the people in prison for Twitter. Correct. So to me, that's like a fake gesture.
And you'll also notice that
you're making it sound, Rich, you're making it sound like by letting the people not have the head covering, that eventually eventually gets you the people out of prison. It never does. You can let them out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mate. You let them out tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, you will also notice that none of these people travelling there, be it from world leaders to esports, none of them are calling for the release of these political prisoners.
Certainly not. No.
Weird that. Anyway, there was a quote within the ESL financial documents, which I'll read just for a little bit of additional context. That is kind of funny, considering that this is now a Saudi Arabia-owned company to the point that they pay something called zakat. Zakat is it's one of the pillars of Islam, where it is like essentially a form of alms giving, and you give 2.5% of your wealth over to the Saudi Arabian state, which they then use for charitable redistribution. And this is something that you'll see in a lot of Islamic countries. So I just thought that was an interesting detail, because they've been saying for ages, we're completely independent. You pay zakat. Like, you are a Saudi Arabian company now. Like, but anyway.
Zakat even sounds like an evil henchman of like a Street Fighter boss or something. You know,
yeah, true. Which is weird, because look, by the way, I actually really like the idea of zakat. That's great. If you're a corporation, 2.5% tithe of your wealth goes to the needy and the poor. That's sick. More of that.
Yeah, but that's the question. Does it, though? Or does it just pay a quick shot to do EWC? You know what I mean? Which is it?
Sorry, Trev.
Which is it, though?
Sorry, Trev.
I know. Listen, you're just the most famous example.
Yeah,
sorry.
But anyway.
He did do them all. He did do the whole thing.
In the document, it said, at EFG, everyone is welcome to play. We are committed to leading the industry by
Except the people in prison because of the tweets. ESL, please stop saying it's for everyone. It isn't. It explicitly isn't for a certain group of people. We can't
just say almost everyone, and then it's fine. That's all you have to do. Just add an almost. Anyway, at EFG, everyone is welcome to play. We are committed to leading the industry by creating safe spaces where women can compete, watch, and win. They win now.
I mean,
they win now.
To be fair, total isolation in prison is a very safe experience.
I mean, actually, yeah.
To be fair,
solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement is very safe.
Once your head has been cut off, you are now safe from every disease in the world. You will never, ever get injured or hurt in any possible way.
All right, Fauci. Relax. Okay. Anyway, our flagship program, #GG4All, is integrating inclusivity.
They're still using that? Yeah. Mate, I thought we'd beaten that out of them years ago. They're still using GG4All hashtag.
It's integrating inclusivity across all of our platforms to inspire greater equity across the industry. From its landmark women-only global Counter-Strike League, ESL Impact, to diversifying programming across DreamHack festivals, to building first-of-its-kind moderation AI Minerva for Faceit, #GG4All has gone from a vision to an industry-defining initiative, which just isn't true. While there is more work to do, certainly there is. Can you think of a country where that work might be necessary at all? No.
There's more work to do. We are now announcing that we have indentured servants from South Asia to complete this work.
We will be building the ESL Stadium.
This is where, if there actually were any activists, there's the other thing, by the way, that the entire Saudi thing has completely blackpilled the fuck out of me. I already knew from conspiracy research a lot of causes and charities are fakes, or their tax write-offs, or their ways of paying yourself a salary and things like that. But it's even worse, because I always say this. Where are the activists that care about this topic in the West? There aren't any, as far as I'm aware. There literally are none. I'm not aware of a single gay rights group, a single women's rights group who actually has any public presence on the topic of what the Saudis do to people in their country and how Western games companies interfere. There's not a single one. Because if there was, I'd even tell you, unironically, you could make some amazing content. I'll tell you an obvious angle. So when ESL does that and they go, GG4All, you do a video where it's like, that's what it is. A woman is literally put in prison 30 years. She turns to the camera, GG. A man is literally about to have his head cut off for dissident reasons. He turns to the camera, GG. You even use the angle against them. It's right there. It's like a low hanging fruit. There just aren't anyone. There's just no one who's. The joke is we are like almost the last people who give a fuck about this topic.
I mean, what I will say, the groups,
GeoGuessr.
the activist groups, the activist groups that I've interacted with and talked to, it's just that. We're still kind of too niche for them to even interface with.
Fair enough.
They're focused on the takeover of soccer, the World Cup bid.
Right.
Golf,
UFC,
boxing,
all that shit,
and obviously directly campaigning for the release of women's rights activists that were imprisoned as a result of MBS's regime. But anyway, just to finish this little paragraph, and then I'll get to the broader point about it. The impact of GG4All Hashtag GG for all can be felt throughout EFG's addressable audience of millions of gamers and offers more opportunities for historically underrepresented groups in gaming than ever before. And so what you have to understand is they're like when they make that statement, none of which is true.
To be fair, the Saudi regime was very underrepresented in esports.
Yeah, correct.
They are
it was.
Represented.
Yeah.
Again, the language, all there. The language, the semantics have nailed me. They got me completely wrecked.
So what is going to happen next year at the Esports World Cup is you will absolutely see either a game changes or an impact, or failing that, they will create another one-off women's tournament, because let's be clear, they have women's tournaments already at the Esports World Cup, and it will be in one of the bigger titles instead of it being like, what is it, Mobile Legends, kiss, bang, bang, fucking whatever, right? So it's gonna
they could never do kiss bang bang because it has gay Perry in it. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Yeah, true. Also true. But straight fire movie. R.I.P. Val Kilmer. You'll always be gay Perry to me. But anyway, that's what's going on there. And so we get to the GeoGuessr, and it's interesting because there's a analog. I would say, look, well, no, not as an analog, more as a contrast. I would say, look at the reaction of the FGC. Now, the FGC is obviously bigger than the GeoGuessr community, right? But they are, I would say, similarly diverse, similarly politically aware, right? And yet, the FGC, there's been some grumblings about Evo having a partnership and Esports World Cup hosting Tekken tournaments and things like this. But by and large, they've gone along with it. And there hasn't been, there's been some prominent members of talent that have said, we don't.
I can't even handle the idea of a community where if someone goes like, I didn't vote left wing, they go, you want to put me in the cage?
Yeah.
And then you go, the Saudis will literally put people in cages and then chop their heads off. Well, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
Yeah.
What? Like, what?
It's also
they're really doing it.
The arch-conservative, reactionary interpretation.
By the way,
Islam.
I've always loved that, Monty. I've always loved the idea. I can't handle right-wing people. Here's the Saudi regime. What would they be? What would they be then? What, are they left-wing, are they? Would they vote Liberal Democrat?
I want everyone, whenever anyone tries to put themselves in this state of being where they go,
right-wing as fuck.
they go, listen, if we work with the Saudis, we can win them over and win hearts and minds and make them think the same way we do. And by the way, a lot of the beliefs that they have is rooted in something that's core to their identity in forms of their faith, part of their doctrine. Right?
And also, if you really wanted to do that, you can't do it by soft power. Like, you would actually be running some munitions to some revolution.
Also, let's be real, guys. It's the other way around. You would pay them, then they might do what you want. They're paying you. Yeah. Obviously, they call the shots. They're paying you.
But so what I would say to anybody that genuinely believes that, well, why don't you reach out to Republicans in America and conservatives around the world and win them over? Yep. Win them over with love and understanding.
I'll give you an example, Richard.
Show them your way of living.
Imagine the same premise. Right? Imagine I came to you, Richard, and I said, here's my proposition. The real problem is no one's reaching out across the aisle. They're always going to be radicalised against us. So what we're going to do is we're going to host game changers at a Trump rally. Yep. Because what we're going to do is we're going to win them all over, all those bigots. We're going to show them that this is why we need gay marriage, that they're totally normal people in society, and even some of our best players are gay and women and minorities. And if you said that idea, that would be considered the most vile suggestion imaginable.
Also, just insane that it would if you think it would work.
Of course.
Here's what I propose.
That's also an insane
Here's what I propose, right? When Trump gets his third term, because the Supreme Court have elected him a king somehow, which the grifter class on Twitter tells me is a very real outcome that's happening. Okay. What we'll do is we'll have game changers at his third inauguration, introduced by Ted Cruz.
There you go.
And listen, if that sounds like an absurd premise, just think about all the good it's going to do when Republicans, they play now. I can't vote. No, boo, Trump.
If anything, Richard, they should be loving Republicans. They've been letting women drive for decades. They have jobs and everything.
Yeah, we had women's suffrage like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a Handmaid's Tale, Monty, a Handmaid's Tale, I tell you.
I mean, it is
Modern
in
day
Saudi
America.
Arabia.
It's a handmaid's tale. Yeah. What's that? They literally have to wear the clothes.
What's
that?
They have a state-sponsored religious authority that requires compliance, or you get killed or put in jail. That's not a handmaid's
But
that
is
similarly, where's the activism?
Yeah.
Where's the activism where you go to the UWC and you dress in the handmaid's tale outfit?
no.
Why haven't you done that yet? Oh, bizarrely, you only do that at the very safe.
No, but they let us have a non-LGBT specific rainbow on the back of our jerseys. The first time anyone has ever had a rainbow ever on clothing in Riyadh.
By the way, that is still
you did
Richard
it,
was
Reddit.
the only one who noticed this, but it is actually mental, Monty. Richard is right. They intentionally didn't even use the normal rainbow flag,
correct.
Monty. They used something which, if at a quick glance you would think was the rainbow flag, it was just a different type of rainbow. For real, Monty. As in, even when Liquid was like, we're going to put the rainbow, it wasn't even the rainbow of that flag. Like, that's how cynical these people are with the language and what they're telling you, mate. It's mental.
I think it was just like the rainbow was just through the font on the back of the shirt. It wasn't like the rainbow flag that you associate with LGBT on the back with the word fucking pride next to it or anything like that. So, you know, I mean, then look, by the way, listen, I'll be real with you. I'm not going to Saudi. I wouldn't wear it if I went to Saudi. Like, you know what I mean? I like my hands. You know, pretty good hands.
Yeah.
So
I imagine you enjoyed not being in a suitcase in pieces.
Yeah. Well, you know, give it time. But anyway, listen. If I see an esports event sponsored by Samsonite, I'm not going to that one neither. But anyway, back to GeoGuessr. You know, in a broader context. What I'm intrigued to see next is, right, like, what is the aftermath of this in the sense that not what GeoGuessr are going to do, the people that make GeoGuessr. As I've said, the community is going to be as black-pilled as any of us on this podcast when they make their own maps and break away associations from anyone that took this stand.
And by the way, little prediction for you. Just like every other community, even people who now, when they can politically and on an expedient angle say, I agree with this and it is wrong, and you should, they also will all cave and still do the events and still watch the events, and eventually everyone will just cave, as with all the other scenes.
Yeah. So, you know, get ready for that.
Seen it happen.
But then, what I'm interested is, right, if GeoGuessr, right, if community pressure from GeoGuessr can do this, right, like makers essentially can do this. What's the equivalent in other games, and then why aren't they doing it? And that for me, that is the next area of pressure. Like, I've given up. You know, like, we did it. It's coming up to June again. How time flies. I'll just put this out there so it's recorded. Obviously, we're coming up to June. Quite famously, Pride Month. We have a huge Pride Month here in Birmingham. It's already started, by the way. There's a ton of big leather daddies just walking around getting wrecked.
Pride Month can't be contained in June alone anymore, Richard.
No, there's a bunch of very, very thirsty gays in Birmingham. I drink in the gay village all the time. It's a good time. But you know, the reality is we're coming to June again. What's going to happen with all these organizations? Because we've measured it. Demonstrably, it's about 80% fewer instances of these orgs talking about pride causes. It certainly doesn't last a month no more. Why is that? In 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, it was the hot topic. Everybody tweeted about it. Since then, ever since the increasing presence of the Saudi Arabian state and Saudi Arabian money, nobody wants to talk about it. Why? No more.
But you see,
why?
Richard,
They're not telling you can't talk about it.
It's now become like the 2 minutes of gay.
But you see, Richard, we are going to change their hearts and minds, and it's not that they've changed our hearts and minds by paying us, and then we get rid of all the things we were talking about.
Now, can anyone tell me where I can get rid of a whole lockup of frags and all like that?
Yeah.
You know, it's really
I've got all these rainbow flags that I can't bloody use no more. No, look, so anyway, what the point I'm making is about the pressure. I
think what we should do is, during Pride Month, I think a month's too long. It should be 3 weeks, and the last week should be Saudi Arabian Awareness Week. Yeah, and we should actually just give awareness to them and the fact that they drive down.
Segue into that. In that smooth move. You know, but like, so here's the thing, right? Like, the players all get to cruise on this, apparently. I've said this before, and I'm
one thing that always shocks me, Richard, is they keep doing this as well. If you ever see the EWC thing, it has some of the most famous players, and put it this
on
way,
their billboards, yeah.
I'll try not to call people out because I don't always know what people's background are, what they've said. But put it this way, one of them for Valorant, you'll know who I mean, Richard. I think it's been fairly clear that they're constantly flexing towards the idea of, like, I support gay people. And some of these people, again, it makes me wonder, do they know that they're involved with this? Do they have no problem with it? Like, because I'm shocked at some of the faces I've seen be like the face of their game on those Twitter ads that we all get served and promoted ads on.
Look, I want to make my personal beliefs absolutely clear. I don't think anyone should be compelled to pay lip service to or show public agreement to anything they don't want to, which is why, by the way, when I see a story about how, like, a hockey player or a football player didn't want to wear the rainbow flag on their arm, I champion them too, by the way. I champion them too.
By the way, I can tell you a quick story. When we were doing Flashpoint, here's an example of what we're talking about. This is where all the dickheads on Twitter will go. I know it's going to come here. Thorin, because him and Monty were in charge and they're evil right-wing Republican voters. They told everyone, I don't want any of that gay shit in here. No, what I actually said, and you remember this, Monty, is I said, I don't want Flashpoint the org to do anything on this messaging because we're just a video game tournament organizer. In the same way as I wouldn't want teams to, because I think everyone has their own social channel. Put whatever you want on there. Yeah, so if you work for Flashpoint, you want to do it, put it on your social media channel. Care. If you work for a team, same thing, Richard. Don't make the player do it, but if he chooses on his own Twitter account,
absolutely.
Because if we do it that way, everyone who wants to support it will support it.
Companies just don't have values besides making money. So people can have values, and people are welcome to express them. Companies do not.
Exactly.
Agency is vital to the authenticity of activism. And one of the things that's happened to activism and causes in general, it's why we have the term slacktivism now, is people blindly go along with it. They change their profile pic, they put a flag in their fucking bio, all of this stuff. You're not really engaging with what's happening, and you're not really doing anything. You're doing the bare minimum to signal you're on the right side of history, whatever you determine that to be. And that's not good for activism, broadly speaking, because then when you interact with those people and you go, well, what did you do for gay rights? How did you stop the Saudi takeover? They went, well, bloody, I had the avatar, didn't I? Like, well, that didn't help, did it? That's not going to help. So agency super important, and therefore occasionally you might have to extend agency to people that don't share your opinions, and they will say, look, I don't want to be compelled to wear that flag or speak upon this topic or do this, and you have to support their right to do so, because as individuals we absolutely must have autonomy over the things we believe, the things we think, and the things we say, and the moral framework we construct for ourselves. Now, that being said, a hockey player not wearing a rainbow flag doesn't get somebody executed the next day. So because I know what people are going to do now, they're going to move to the next logical step, and they're going to go, but if you believe that, why don't you let the Saudis run their country the way they do? Because I believe human rights are sacrosanct for everybody. And if you're going to murder somebody for being gay, or murder somebody for speaking up about women's rights, or make an entire gender be a second-class citizen in a country to the point where they may as well not have any form of political engagement or agency that I'm talking about, yes, guess what? I think that's bad, and I think people should take a stand against that. As shocking as that might sound to people.
Turns out that's just antithetical to everything we believe in, or allegedly believe in as people who are in democratic liberal societies in the West.
It's why I always detested the kind of like libtards that cry about how bad things are in America and how they are in the West. Because right. So I've done like like work and promotion for stuff like, I don't know, the Innocence Project, right? Miscarriages of justice, where people spend their entire life in prison for a crime they didn't commit. And I think to myself, like, how monstrous is that? How monstrous is that your one existence is essentially stolen from you? It's the ultimate theft. Well, now imagine you're born in a country and you just happen to be a woman in that country, and you will never have the rights that a man would know, or even a woman in another country. And then it's like you're told by everyone domestically, this is normal, this is proper, this is right, and you live that life. Meanwhile, you eventually somehow are allowed access to the internet, because enough of a stink was kicked up about that, and you sat there with your chaperone watching your Google search, and you realise women all around the world don't live like that. There are women that do have agency and autonomy and get to make their own decisions and get to contribute to society in meaningful ways and get to make choices. And how would that make you feel? And then how would it make you feel if those same people didn't fucking take a stand for you? Like, how would you feel about that? And that's what I'm talking about. This is a matter of basic empathy. I don't want to hear that they drive now. I want to understand why they were never, why were they forbidden from driving in the first place? Why?
Also, mate, I will always push back against that because, again, there's a fake thing they do where they make it seem like an endless march of progress, right? I will repeat again that after the actual association began between like ESL and Western Esports and the Saudis, they have increased the numbers of beheadings. They increased it.
Correct.
Like, again, they drive now sounds like you're trying to ape Western standards changing, and that if this comes, that's like then the next thing will, and it's gradually getting better and better. No, in some ways it's getting worse. It can also get worse as well.
Yes, and in some area, and like you said, what you have to understand, that's why sports washing is so despicable, because what it is doing is it is holding up the puppet here. Look at the shiny puppet, and you go, oh, this is great. Progress, look at the puppet of progress. I like this. But obviously what they're doing over here is they're imprisoning more people. They're executing more people. I mean, by the way, look, however you feel about the Israel-Palestine conflict right now, I don't like the fact that the Saudi Arabian government, because it is now part of their goals to normalize relationships with Israel, they are locking up pro-Palestinian protesters with no trial. Nice. They are just locking them up and putting them away. Think about that, right? And guess what? Yes, that's bad too. It's all bad, guys. You're not going to catch me out. I'm not going to step on a rake and go, well, when they oppress this group, it's okay, actually. No, I'm not going to do that.
By the way, Richard, here's the weirdest thing I don't get. It's sort of like, actually, what people do in other areas. I want to say this, like the two obvious angles, I'll go for both extremes, right? Even if, pick whichever cause you want, pick Palestine, Israel, whichever side you think the bad guys are, right? Why would someone just protesting be evil? That's the entire foundation of liberal Western democracies, you idiots. Yep. Whether you are aware, I've often said this, and sadly, this will obviously get misinterpreted, but people will never understand this. When I was a boy, and I grew up like everyone, being told all the typical things, I remember as a boy, I've told this story many times before, I remember once seeing like a news thing that showed that in America, they would actually allow like Nazis to do, or KKK people to do marches, and that the police would
defended
be on the sides of things.
Defended by the
and at the time,
people like that,
I remember saying like, but what the fuck? Like, why did they do that? And then someone explained like, no, but that's the whole premise, is that if you don't essentially allow people in a peaceful manner to express their political opinions, then you will literally end up in a world where eventually it will actually be a good political opinion that is then silenced and cannot be dissenting, and you can't actually affect change in that manner. So essentially you have to, even though that sounds heinous to people, same as on the other side, I've always thought this about Western cancellations. It's like, it's one thing if you think that person themselves is directly involved with like evil causes. If they're just someone who's just like, I just voted for this person, is it the end of the world that they voted for something you think's bad but didn't do anything more than that? Does that really require them to be removed from society? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I don't get. It's like you're doing what you're saying with this activism, Richard. You're thinking if you lash out at this tiny little person, tangentially, very loosely connected, that you're like stopping the main cause of the issue. You're not affecting it at all. You're just being a dickhead to some minor person. So I'm with you. Pick whatever. By the way, if someone's a Palestinian side, same with the Israeli supporter. You'd still want them to be allowed to protest, though. They're not Israel themselves. They're not themselves killing anyone. In fact, they don't even have any plans to do that. They're just giving their political opinion, which is allowed in our society, surely. Isn't that entirely the point of our societies? For
I mean, I'll definitely add, there is an irony in a lot of the people that are taking a stand against Saudi for imprisoning political dissidents certainly wouldn't have an issue with certain other political viewpoints being punished and imprisoned. And I don't even mean fringe ones like you're talking about. I'm talking about mainstream ones. But anyway, back to the point. That is that ultimately what I'm intrigued about now, off the back of what GeoGuessr have done, and I said the GeoGuessr community rather than the GeoGuessr creators, although I guess nominally speaking it's one and the same. I want to see like what group needs to have the pressure applied to them that's equivalent to the GeoGuessr map makers. Like, who would it be? I think players. I think that fact that players, there isn't a single player that has come out and like in CS or like Dota or something, and acted as like a figurehead to stand up against this
closest was
stuff.
Twist just saying
Twist.
in a very vague way, I don't want to be involved with that shit or something. That's about it.
And then competed in ESL events and everything else.
Just didn't join a team. That's it.
So, you know, like it annoys me because when I think about history and how sports and politics interwoven.
And I've even just realised, Richard, actually, I don't even know if I can give Twist full marks. He's on Team Liquid. Guess what? They wore all the jerseys and went to EW6. You know what? Maybe you get a tiny bit of credit, but I'm taking some of it back.
No, absolutely.
Taking some back.
But it's like, this is what I mean. It's like, without trying to be flippant about this, you know, where's the... You know, obviously Muhammad Ali's the obvious one, but like, where's the equivalent of that? Where is the player that is going to say, you put me in prison, you know, fucking take my contract? Obviously, put me in prison is Muhammad Ali. Like, that's not happening to any esports
Here's what's
guy.
sad, mate. I even feel like the most effective people, literally, man for man, pound for pound, would be the people who compete in Game Changers.
Yeah. Yes.
If every minority gay person or woman was like, I will not stand for this, not in my name, essentially, I think that could be like a fulcrum to change the whole thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It'd be really hard to push back against that
Well,
politically.
no, but again, I know from behind the scenes, talking about ESL Impact, there have been a number of people that curate that product that are absolutely vehemently against the finals being held in Riyadh. They think it's antithetical to what,
fair enough.
Right? But ESL,
but they still work for
laying
ESL, by the way. They still work for ESL.
Sure. ESL are laying people off left, right, and centre as well. And if you put yourself in the crosshairs, you know, like the old saying, if you stand up like a nail, you will be knocked down. You will get the hammer.
Funny enough, a Japanese saying, I believe.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good at podcasts. But the problem you've got is if you push too hard on that, you're going to get fired, and they'll just put in someone who will take ESL Impact to Riyadh. And so, that's inevitable, by the way. That's inevitable. The only people that can stop that are the competitors. And unfortunately, what will end up happening there is the prize money will be so large that it'll get an increase. It'll be so tantalizing. Especially for a female competitor, it will be life-changing money.
It's also
and so
like,
what do you do
the way pro players work is like, okay, so we sit this EWC out, then they increase the prize pool, and wait, I'm a pro player and those assholes won that money. Those guys fucking suck. They don't deserve that money. That's the attitude that they have.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And so I am intrigued. I think players have been given a pass. I think many commentators, many broadcast talent took a stand. And what you realize in that moment when you take that stand is you are just replaceable. And it's not a nice feeling.
Well, I think what's funny is that most of them didn't take a
decision.
stand. They just didn't attend and said nothing.
Well, I'll take that. I mean, I'll take that over.
No, but they're hedging their bets because they're just waiting for the water to get...
To me, that's... Yeah, all that is to me is that you're just preparing for when you are going to do it. Yep. I never said anything.
I
think you're preempting it.
It is more complicated because obviously as well, like we agree there is a difference, right, between working for ESL and working for the Esports World Cup. We agree there is a difference.
Because like ESL, most of the ESL events are not sports washing. I'm talking about people who, turned down EWC but didn't say anything.
I'll also give you another distinction. I do think it's a lot different to ask someone who already was in the middle of an ESL contract to leave that contract immediately, as opposed to someone who, like we would have been doing, goes into it knowing you're signing with the Saudis. I also think that is a distinction worth making too.
I've talked to many people who aren't American, right? And remember, there are some nations that don't necessarily share American sensibilities in terms of trying to impart values. And in fact, some people from some nations that have had let's say they've had a friendly visit from America in their history to bring democracy to them or whatever it might be, I can understand why they're totally reticent to get on board. And they certainly view this as it's just America trying to impart its cultural values. Well, we don't give a fuck about those values. And they believe in almost like the sovereignty of a nation to even do things that are fundamentally bad. And right, and so there are lots of complexities to this that need to be acknowledged. As I've said, for me, it's just quite simple that if you profess to care about human rights, particularly if you were one of the American people that were talking about human rights above all, dignity for everyone, marginalized groups, inclusivity, equity of outcome, all of that stuff, if you were paying lip service to those values in 2018 and you're now working with Riyadh and trying to make excuses for it, I'm unfortunately going to pull your card over that. Because that's beyond the pale, because what that tells me is you never really cared about it. The first time you were tested financially, you folded. But for other people, if you choose to not work for the EWC, but you do work for ESL, there are some degrees of hypocrisy within that. But let's be clear, the Esports World Cup is the sports washing event.
Yes, it is.
That is what it is. It is designed to make Saudi look like a hub of gaming, which it isn't. A hub of esports, which it isn't. It is designed, essentially, to ultimately launder the reputation of Falcons, the royal family, and everyone involved in presenting this big tournament. An ESL event, an Intel Extreme Masters in Melbourne, doesn't necessarily
that doesn't
achieve the same
mention
goals.
Saudi Arabia at all, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they have the Qadiyah commercials, I guess. You know, Visit Qadiyah or whatever. If it's even built yet, I don't know.
No,
but,
it's probably just another vapor city.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, but ultimately, I agree that all of these things are different. And so for me, the one where the pressure needs to be applied is specifically the Esports World Cup. I think for too long we've kind of like accepted that it's like, oh, you know, we have to do it. Why? I just cannot get my head around it. If a small game, a small niche game, can collectively get their shit together enough to actually make a change like that, I don't understand why it can't happen for Counter-Strike or it can't
and a community
happen for Dota,
as well,
or it can't happen for League. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, players are in the community too, right?
Sure.
You know, it's easy to forget that. They're part of it. You know, as I said, I don't know what the equivalent of a map maker would be. You know, Valve in CS, they own the maps. In Dota, it's the map. Again, it's owned by Valve. In League of Legends, there isn't an independent map maker that could go, well, I'm not letting my map be, you know, they buy the maps to essentially use them as official maps. So it would have to be something like players. It would have to be players or staff. Essential staff refusing to attend. I mean, even if the coaches took a stand, the teams would still turn up, but we'd acknowledge there'd be diminished, there'd be an absence, you would talk about it.
Let's be real. If ESL production staff who didn't formerly work in Saudi Arabia said, hey, we're willing to continue to run the entire ESL circuit, but we're not doing EWC, this whole thing would collapse immediately.
Yeah.
They need them to do production. They need them.
Yep, absolutely. But, I mean, listen, if you do that, you know, it's food off your table. And not a lot of people have this.
There's a lot of production jobs in the world, Richard. Here's
one of the reasons. Look, I know I've referenced this previously.
Got to go out and get them.
It might just seem like petty grievances, but I'll just throw this out there. The reason why I find the ESL one so egregious is I've told this story before. In 2019, I worked an ESL event where what they wanted before the event began was everyone who was talent had to sign an any key pledge where you had to promise that you would never say things that were sexist, racist, blah, blah, all of that. The joke is I did sign it because my logic goes, well, one of the things I say are those things. The joke, that's a little bit disingenuous because they would maybe say they are, but in good faith, I could sign that document. But I will just say the idea I have to do that, like some mad Soviet struggle session, but then you as a company can turn around and go, you know, and then shut the fuck up. Actually, just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, no, it's
because people don't know in Europe, Germans of that type of left-wing German are the equivalent of the really annoying Californian blue voter who just fucking annoys you and all that. So the idea they're going to do that over something that minor and then turn around and work with the Saudi Arabian state, like, because all the same people,
except with a way more annoying accent, of course.
Indeed.
But anyway, to move on to the next topic and wrap this one up, I do want to say, like, obviously, huge. Congratulations is the wrong word, but just huge kudos. Is that a wanky word that fits? I don't know. To them for doing this, and obviously we wish there was more communities like you in competitive gaming. And long may it continue. I unfortunately think you're going to get the bums rush next year. But until then, enjoy, because victories around this topic have been hard fought and barely won. So, yeah.
Look, the truth of the Saudi involvement
GeoGuessr.
is that it's going to peter out on its own because it's simply too expensive compared to the amount of sports washing they're receiving when you compare it to things like golf, right? So I think it's just going to be a bad investment over a long timeline.
I also had an idea, and I don't know if this would be of any value, but to all of the GeoGuessr community, if you see this episode, which I sincerely hope you do, if you wanted to raise more awareness about this topic, I'm pretty sure with GeoGuessr being the way it is, I would urge the map makers, let's make a map where it's basically, you know, we do all the countries that violate human rights all around the world, and you have to specifically guess which one it is in a game of GeoGuessr, and I will host that event for free. and I will rustle up talent to come and work that event for free.
The worst places on
that
Earth.
event for free. And it has to be the GeoGuessr Human Rights Violators Special Cup. And I will absolutely do that with you guys.
Incredible.
That is a genuine, serious offer. So
I love it. Well, guys, we got one more sponsor today. And it's pertinent because if you were to visit a place like Saudi Arabia or any other place that might be on the GeoGuessr Human Rights Violators Cup, I would recommend that you use a VPN because you have no idea what those ISPs are looking at while you're there connected in those countries. And if you're using a VPN, you, of course, should use ExpressVPN. It's got a slick little app that can go on your phone. Mine's basically always on these days. Especially because in Korea here, there's public Wi-Fi everywhere. No point not having it on, really. It's incredibly fast. And also, if you're watching along, as we say with Foreplay, you can visit Netflix in a variety of different countries and see the movies that we are telling you should watch along with us. And they might be on a streaming service you already own in another country on Earth where you do not reside. Therefore, you are getting value out of the thing that you are already paying for. So that's a great use of it as well. So ExpressVPN, it's been really nice. It's an app on your PC. You can even put it on your router if you want to protect your entire network. It could be on your phone, like I said, your tablet, whatever you need. And it's just like one button that you push and you can change the server to countries all over the world. They don't even keep your information, right? It gets deleted basically immediately. So it's pretty great. We use it all the time. And you can secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/horsemen, plural, MEN. That's expressvpn.com/horsemen to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months free with our code. So you get a little bonus there, 4 extra months if you sign up with our code, expressvpn.com/horsemen. So thank you to ExpressVPN. Keep yourself protected. Keep yourself secure. Okay, last topic of today, guys. As I understand, we'll let Richard lead with this one because he's been writing some articles on his Substack. We've got to talk about Astralis in Counter-Strike, once proud Counter-Strike titan. Now, as I understand it, failing to make their, 5th consecutive major? Which is insane, considering this team's dominance, as well as their popularity.
Monty, do you want to know a hilarious detail? This is how badly managed they were. Before that, they were one of the famous orgs where their players, people like Device, not only were at every major, they were in the playoffs of every major.
Yeah.
They used to have an incredible record. Now they've just missed $1 billion.
And also, I would say
loads of stickers money lost. So by the way, off the top of my head, 5 majors missed. One of them was one of the biggest in history, by the way. That's probably like upwards of $10 million or something, like $7 million, somewhere like that. That's a lot of money lost. Yeah.
And also, like, if you consider the fact that it was almost certainly Astralis that caused many people in Denmark to play Counter-Strike. It probably helped Blast receive funding, being a Copenhagen-based company. So people probably invested in Blast, especially because...
in the first year, I believe, literally the government gave them some money.
Yeah, exactly. Year. And, the Copenhagen, everybody in Denmark has been huge Astralis fans. They were supporting them in, the Royal Arena in Copenhagen. Overwhelming fan favorites there. They've had basically everything going for them. And the latest news is after selling their League of Legends slot last year, they are now on the auction block and trying to sell themselves. And the value of this team has apparently depreciated to between 13 and 20 million Danish kroner. I believe that's how you say the currency, which is about $2 to $3 million US.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being told that currently, I think they're looking for 4 mil,
which is terrible, by the way, guys.
But understand, obviously, this is all relative in terms of like anything that goes to auction. It's worth whatever you're willing to pay for it. It could be
and
less,
what they're selling is
more. It could be a lot more.
Yeah, what they're selling is a lackluster Counter-Strike roster. They already sold their League of Legends spot in Europe, and
they technically own part of it, though.
Oh, that's true.
As far as I know, they own a small percentage of it, maybe like a third of it or something. I think Monty and the rest of the slot went to like Garmin Corp or whatever. I believe they have like a tiny amount.
Yeah, there's a deal being negotiated now under these circumstances, which is to buy the entirety of it. There's like another payment that's
an obvious one to do.
To be made, and obviously, but basically, it's interesting because what ended up happening was behind the scenes, the LEC slot that was sold. And that went for about £18 million to Carmine Core, whatever it was. They wanted to keep their hand in, but what's happened now, since the NASDAQ delisting, just a bunch of like disastrous financial ramifications from missing things like the major and repeated majors. You know, that's at least $1 million cash injection from the stickers every time, potentially more. You know, so it ultimately the investors have really lost the taste for it. And what they want to do is they just want to flip this now, get the fuck out with whatever they can get the fuck out
especially because the value here is the intellectual property in the name Astralis, and every major they miss makes that value go down. So
what also hasn't helped, and this is why it's very hard for me to sympathize, is Astralis have been utter cunts at every single turn it was possible to be an utter cunt. You have to understand, they're one of the only esports orgs I've ever covered that have engaged in something that would be accurately labeled corporate espionage, in the sense of how they tried to destroy Heroic by working with by the performance coach / whatever the fucking title he had, Casper Hitt, working with Hunden, who was employed by Heroic at the time, to essentially build a team for Astralis, but also share competitor intelligence, which, by the way, I can say all of this because my publication was the one that was able to prove this beyond any doubt. And also, Astralis dismissed both of them as a result of my reporting, and ESL fined them $100,000 as a result of my reporting, all of which leads me to believe my reporting was accurate, right? So, the reality is, I cannot sympathize with where the org is at now, even though the only people being affected are, by and large, a skeleton crew of staff and the players themselves. And I'm friends with, obviously, some of the players, their coach, Rugger, I go fucking, way back with. But unfortunately, Astralis had, like, a source even said it in the article I wrote. They said, basically, Astralis has to be destroyed for Danish CS to rise again. Because Astralis, they just ruined every other small organization. I'm talking, forget what they did to Heroic when Heroic was a Danish identifying organization. I'm talking about, if you develop talent at an organization like Sprout or Tricked or any, it was gobbled up. It was gobbled up, and you were put under immense pressure to sell. And all the best Danish talent had to be Astralis. Even if there wasn't any direct fuckery or direct pressure, we're Astralis. You're not Astralis. You're Danish. Who do you want to play for? Right. And that's what everyone was up against in the Danish territory. The fact that Astralis were essentially a fucking leviathan that was just swimming through the ocean, swallowing anything else that it wanted. And so I totally agree with that assessment and characterization. So, yeah, I have no sympathy with Astralis. Here's the interesting component, Duncan. My sources have told me the person that is actually checked out and is essentially driving the sale of Astralis is Nicolai Nyholm.
Perfect.
Yeah.
By the way, if people don't know, the reason why that is too on the nose is I never ever bought that this guy ever cared about Counter-Strike esports. He was always one of those people where it seemed like that was just his vehicle to get rich and to go on to the next project. If you don't know, he's an investor in many different companies. Yep. And the crucial detail that we actually revealed on, I think by the time by the numbers was ending, Richard, was that the reason why it's so conspicuous that he's now the one doing this is because I believe it was like a year or so ago that he finally got where his shares were all invested and he'd be at the point where he could leave. Before that, he wouldn't leave because he wouldn't have been incentivized to. So basically, the moment this guy can sort of just waltz off and sell it, etc., magically, now he's in favor of selling. Weird how that works.
I mean, the way I now feel about, right, because you have to understand, I now have come to view my esports career, my 20-year esports career. It's basically a game of Elden Ring. The people I was battling back, when I started, they're just nothing compared to the monsters that we've got in the space right now. Like I'm on the fucking Saudi Arabian government, mate. Like the fucking organisations that weren't paying people £400 from an iSeries back in 2005. It's like they were the starter bosses. And I've come to view Nicolai and Nyholm in a very kind of similar way. When I was doing this reporting, I reached.
Well, he's a mid-level boss. He's not even the ultimate boss.
Yeah, let's be clear. Let's be clear of what his sins are. He is a liar and a manipulator who operates from a point of self-interest. I think I've just described every business.
You haven't even narrowed anyone down at all.
No, that's it. I think that's everyone in esports in a way. So it's like it's not even that he ever did anything terrible. You can maybe make arguments over
absolutely.
He hired bad people who did terrible things, and you can also make an argument about what they did to that legendary Astralis lineup was really bad, to force them essentially to have to go get doctor's notes just so they could get a break after they've been fantastic servants to the brand, while also supposedly, total lie of course, being co-owners. Because of a very small piece of equity,
which, by the way, they ran with that story for a long. I actually take that as one of our wins as well, Richard. That we turned people to finally understand that. That's why we kept going on about Nicolai and Nyholm, because for many years they also would have gotten away with it all because people actually thought that the org was owned by like Carrigan and Device. Like,
I mean,
that's basically what they were living off.
When I did the Copenhagen event, the Copenhagen major, Nicolai and Nyholm was in attendance, and we were at a party for the launch of the CS documentary that they showed there. They had a premiere for it, the one that Tom made. For those you've all seen.
Oh, Memories of CS.
Yeah.
Memories of CS, or something, right? Yeah.
Anyway, Nicolai and Nyholm was there having cocktails, and I sidled up to him. We had a very long conversation. It was very nice. It was in good faith. And like I say, like when Christmas comes, we can get out the trenches and we can all have a game of football. I'm about that, and then we can go back and we can get back to shooting each other. That's kind of how I've always viewed what I do. And honestly, I got the impression then, and this seems to be bore out now. This was a guy actually that had probably realized that, like, he thought he was going to come into esports and be slick and have it all locked up. And he did achieve some good things. And he did achieve things, by the way, where it didn't have to be nefarious and it didn't have to be a lie. All of those achievements of Astralis, once they got the Nicolai and Nyholm backing, the creation of Blast, these are W's on the Nicolai and Nyholm CV.
Also paid a lot of great players a lot of money as well. A lot of your favourites.
And remember, this was a guy, by the way, when he first got into the space, he originally wanted to create a player union and create organisations that he was essentially going to give portions of equity over. Not big portions, but he wanted to create his own league. That was what Blast was originally going to be, where, Fallen had a team and Device had a team and Olaf had a team. All theoretical, right? Just random names I'm putting out. But they would have a brand and they would be the captain of that brand, and they would own equity in that brand, and they would recruit a team to that brand, but ultimately Nyholm would be controlling it all. And so that to me seemed dangerous, and this is how we ended up clashing consistently over the course of many, many years. But anyway, to the point, the view I got from him, all smiles and having drinks and saying, you should come on a podcast, blah, blah. I got the feeling this was a man who was leaving esports, and he's on the Danish equivalent of Dragon's Den now. He's just ascended. He's like, he tried to lock up esports. He gave however many years of his life to it when he came in, but now he's realised the returns aren't worth it, the stress ain't worth it, there's always going to be a Richard Lewis waiting to fucking fuck up your shit every time you try and do something devious, and actually I can just go and
Why not just parlay your business interests you got from Astralis into a bigger business elsewhere? I'm sure that's what his plan is. Yeah, of course.
So
makes sense.
So anyway, the fact that he is now driving the sale, reportedly, makes total sense. Now, I did reach out to him for comment. He didn't reply. I don't know if that's just because he's too busy and he didn't see it, or if he has no interest. But as always, I extended an invitation for him to come on a podcast. Here, I would extend him an invitation to come and be the fourth horseman, and we could talk about Danish esport, especially if you're getting out of it. Now we can just put all the cards on the table. You can tell from your perspective whether you thought we were harsh or not. We can tell you all the shit stuff that we thought you did and why it would be an anathema to people who would organic to esports. We can have that conversation now. But by and large, it looks to me like Nicolai Nyholm and his time in Astralis is ultimately done, and therefore it's no coincidence that they are rudderless right now. Like, whatever you want to say about him as a person, as a man, as a businessman, he gave Astralis the direction.
The vision, of course.
Well, it's also,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Because Astralis was born out of the shit job TSM did with the core of that team, right?
Yep.
And
couldn't happen without them. Good on you, Reggie. You've done it again.
I do think it takes some ambition and vision to realize what Astralis became as a brand and its importance to Denmark and their kind of unassailable position as the gods of Counter-Strike, right? I mean, they did a good job with it. All that.
By the way, that thing I say about paying players well, that is no small feat. As you say, Monty, they're a company from Denmark. They're not Americans. Like, to even get the sponsorships and the actual revenue to be able to pay people like Device as if he was in like Team Liquid or Cloud9 is actually very impressive. Like, that's no small feat in itself. Also, they did do other things, like they did successfully parlay their success into getting an LEC slot, which, by the way, seemingly they probably even profited from. That's very rare. If you can profit out of an esports game, you fucking killed it. Secondly, I'll also throw this out there. What was the other thing I was going to put out there? Fuck, wait. There's one other part as well that I could give him credit for. Wait a minute. The LEC.
Brand.
Paying the players.
Paying players.
There's one more, but I forgot what it was now.
You'll remember in 2 minutes.
What could it be?
Yeah, you'll get
keep
it.
Talking, I'll remember.
You always do.
I do agree that the paying the players thing was huge. It's not like they did wrong necessarily.
Oh, by the way, that's it. The stock market one.
Yeah.
There you go. Because if people don't know, this is one of the areas where actually I am not, as people imagine, someone who like people do to me in CS, where they go, I guess my opinion is whatever the opposite of yours is. I don't actually do that. I'm not a contrarian like that. So I'll give you an example. I, like a noob, like Bobski, would look at the stock market price and go, this price isn't very high. It must be. No. Lurpis, who actually understands that sort of thing, told me if you ever actually saw where their stock price was, like a year ago or whatever, it was fine. That was actually okay. And if you actually understood when people bought in what their expectations would have been, it was actually an okay amount. It wasn't at the point that like you would actually delisted. They'd survived that period. And in fact, Lurpis even said if you looked at the time coupled with the LEC sale, they probably at that time were in okay position financially. So it's not even just that because here's what I don't want this to be. Just because I don't like Nicolai Nyholm doesn't mean he was incompetent at every aspect of business. In fact, at certain aspects of business, I've said this before, he did actually play people and beat them a lot of the times and win a lot. By the way, I'll even give you, indirectly us because he did it through Flashpoint.
Yeah, exactly.
But to be fair, I did warn them the whole time. You know this, Monty. I told him the whole time I don't believe it's real, but he did.
That also happened. Yeah. All of that happened basically before we came on board too. Like all those conversations and everything.
And that wasn't within our purview at the time anyway.
We couldn't fix it. That's for sure.
I wasn't in those meetings. Yeah, exactly. So, but in general, like you don't have to do the Donald Trump thing of like, I don't like him, so everything he does is bad and he is an idiot and stinky. You can just fucking call people on the shit they did, mate. And on the shit he did, yes, he was a horrendous liar who at times, the closest he came to doing anything wrong, in my opinion, was the thing where it's possible, let's just say he allegedly might have pressured people to play who were burned out, etc. That's a bit fucked up, but by the way, that's not even itself that uncommon in massive esports.
Also, kind of a minor crime compared to what happened in League of Legends.
Exactly. Nicole Point Jameson really fucking raised the game on that one.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
The Warren Buffett of fucking player mishandling.
No, I'm with you, Richard. Even though to me I hate it. If your biggest crime is lying, that does actually. I'm sorry, that doesn't measure up to things like
Nyholm, we call him.
Yeah, exactly.
Nyholm.
It's not that big, is it? Come on.
He's having a lie. That's all he does. But yeah. So anyway, right. So he's the one meant to be driving the sale. Where it gets really.
And I still think, even though you think it's cheesy, I don't give a fuck, Richard. My little video I did, where I did like a TikTok, where I was like, his name looks like it's written, Monty, as Nicolai, but actually in Danish it would be Nicolai. So there's even a lie hidden in his name. I'll forever maintain that straight fire. I don't care what anyone says. I'm doing my own reviews on that one. I think that was a bad one.
Yeah.
That one's legit.
Great.
Sadly, not a lot of uptake with the kids. Didn't really become sort of a meme like I was hoping in, but you know.
Unk is off his meds. I remember.
Basically, unfortunately.
But anyway, so that's the Nicolai Nyholm aspect of it. I think basically he's just looking to move on, and ultimately he's the one saying, look, I'm the competent guy at the company. Now, he has to shoulder a lot of the blame. He has hired absolute fucking idiots every time. I think, honestly, in retrospect, one of his biggest weaknesses was he was like a almost terrible judge of character and what was necessary to succeed in esports, because Casper shit. He's a famous handball player, and Nicolai Nyholm's on record, did a YouTube video about this. He was going, from the moment I talked to Casper, he blew my mind by talking about how, like, even the way players sit on the bus can be important for their performance. And it's like, none of that's true in esports, big homie. Like Casper's finessed you hired him. And then, of course, obviously, in sort of a visualization of the greater fool theory, Casper shit became enamored with fucking Hunden in a way that was inexplicable. So, it was just this chain of incompetence that ultimately brought Astralis to the point it's at. They brought in this Casper Strauber, the performance coach at Heroic, that was essentially headhunted by Astralis and then used, because of the relationship he had with Stown and Yabby, to do the $2 million stabby fucking deal. Right.
By the way, the most expensive era of their club, because before that, you already had the players from TSM, and you're just adding like one player every couple of years. The Casper Straub guy oversaw like millions being given away for nothing in return. Almost.
And as I've said, like one of the things I will always love about this, especially now that Casper Straub has been fired, because I think the source said, quote, his salary is too big to justify.
Love that.
Right.
Love it.
So, I mean, that tells you two things. One, they were paying him a fuck ton, and two, what he was doing was dog shit. So I love that.
Wait, that's one last thing I will say, though. One other thing they did that I think was mildly unethical, but only mildly, this is sort of the game in esports, sadly, is they did, as you're saying, I only reference it in light of the fact, as you say, this guy was on a giant salary. Oh, don't worry, Monty. They would do an Astralis where they'd have like device, like bona fide, like Hall of Famer, great player still. They'd have like other really top players, Yabby, and then they'd always have a player in there who was like an academy player, just so he could be on the academy contract.
Yeah.
So he's still playing with the expectations of device, but then he'll be on like, I'm going to guess 5k a month or 3k a month or something. So they would also be like, and then the guy
they would always cut
makes,
them. They would always cut them like 3 months later.
So that does sort of stick in my throat when the guy making the decision to hire that cheapo player than himself.
No, but it was also
another Lamborghini, sir. I don't like that particularly.
It was also predicated on the fact that, again, he was employing people who thought esports and sports are a direct overlap, like, and it just doesn't work that way. They honestly thought if you put a bunch of if you put a bunch of young Danish players in an academy side and you gave them access to the staff and the resources of the main Astralis side, the players will naturally elevate. That's generally how it works in football, right? Eventually, we could slot in 1 or 2 youngsters here. The problem is when you've got 5 players here and 5 players there, there aren't enough bullets in the chamber for you to keep firing out stars. And then if you're going to spend 2 million at the start of a new game for 2 players unproven in that game, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's bad business. And that was the last of the big spending, by the way, that they had. After that, it was kind of like, shit, it has to work, and it didn't.
I mean, understandably, because, again, as reference, you never made any sticker money in this time. Yeah. You never, ever get anything back.
Correct. So
and then they killed the partner program. I mean, it's terrible.
I mean, you can go and look on my Substack. I literally, again, all I've been doing the last month, apart from events, has been looking at financial records of orgs. So I've posted Astralis's last publicly filed financial records as part of the report. People can go and see for themselves. There's all the anecdotal stuff's in there. The hardcore numbers are in there. But anyway, just back to the CS team. The other thing that they did, Casper Strauber, You bring him in, you give him 6 figures. You know, this is meant to be the performance coach that's going to do everything, and then you make Device the IGL. I've never understood this. It's not that Device, who, remember, I've known him a long, long time. I got respect for the kid. It's all of that. But he has a stress-induced medical condition. You take less stress off his plate. You don't put more on it.
You make him the in-game leader, Monty.
And lo and behold, by the way, and like I am not saying these two things are linked, because that might be a level of speculation I'm not qualified to make. But since then, right, Device has missed the tournament due to sickness. When we did Cluj, he had to leave the stage to throw up, which we were told not to say it, even though we said it. Astralis complained about that, and then Cadian said it in the interview afterwards. So, nice one, Astralis. You're great. And then apparently they all had diarrhea and sickness again, including Device, most recently at the start of Astana. So, far be it from me to suggest that maybe the guy who has like a well-documented medical digestive condition exacerbated by stress. Far be it from me to say you should be putting more stress on his table. But anyway, Kasper Strauber not only made that decision, Device also made the decision, and the players around him made that decision, and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, it was co-signed by Kasper Strauber. He came on to an episode of HLTV live at Copenhagen to announce it and do the whole thing, and it was like really contrived. It was like a Tom Cruise press conference in that sense, appropriate given the player. And then, after that press conference, I saw Kasper Strauber, and he tried to alpha me, dude. He came up. I was stood there to a bunch of journalists going, well, what a pile of shit that was, right? Like, And he came up and he tried to alpha me, and he went, oh, so it's you who says all the bad things about Astralis? And I went, yeah, that's me. That is me. You have got me there. And then he said, well, what do you think about this move that we're making now? And he like held his hand out, so I shook it, and then he did this hand squeeze.
Miss me on all that.
Yeah,
I know.
he did the hand squeeze, and as he was doing it, I said, "Well, I think you're a fucking idiot. I think Device isn't going to succeed as an IGL. By the way, I'm still holding his hand. I think Device isn't going to succeed as an IGL. I think your fucking PR is garbage." And anyway, then he let go of my hand, and I went, honestly, if you're a performance coach and you can't put these things together, why are you even fucking employed? I'd do your job for half the money, mate, and I'd do a better job at it. Like, you're a fucking embarrassment. Anyway, and I've said that. And all the journalists are like turning around and like laughing, like, "Oh no, why can't Richard just be confrontation averse just once in his life?" But fuck these people, mate. They think they're gonna fucking stare you down. I'm right. I've been right about Astralis since day one. And by the way, what happened to the Device IGL thing? Total fucking failure. Oh yeah, okay. Another W for me. I'll take them all day long. So anyway, Astralis is definitely appointed incompetent people time and time and time again and paid them money. And unfortunately, I think, Nicolai Nyholm, obviously, if he's the one making the decision, he has to take a lot of that blame. But man alive, you can't legislate for everyone in Danish esports being a fucking moron. I mean, like, how can you legislate for that? But it turns out that's what he got. So Astralis, they're on the brink. I mean, where they go now is very interesting, because obviously, if the sale is going to go to people, I'm told there's some interest in like the Middle East and other parts of the world and blah blah. But like, what do you do with the brand? And you've only got one team on the books now, and it's a CS team with an IGL on a short-term contract. I interviewed Hypocrisy at the event that I just did in Astana, and I literally said to him, this was on air. I said, like, what's the deal with your contract? Because you've done so well, is there a chance of, like, re-signing? And he said, bro, I don't fucking know. I don't know. They said, do you want to come play for Astralis? I said, yes.
By the way, the obvious linchpin that destroys the entire brand is if Device retires, you have nothing inside this org. You're not even buying anything at that point in time. You got nothing.
Well, I do have some interesting little info about that. One organization offered to buy the players,
okay.
but not all of them, and that apparently has been rejected. They definitely want the players to go with the Astralis brand.
Right.
What I strongly suspect is that is like the value. I don't know if
it's the entire
brand
value.
Now,
I mean, there is no Astralis brand value without the
But to
the
Duncan's
legacy,
point,
right?
how much of that is device? And let's be real. I've said this. I understand device. He should be at like his age, his last hurrah, the last of his great form. And also being on an organization that's desperate to sell. People should be beating down the door for him. A world-class proven AWPer, tenured, but because of the health problems, they're not.
Sure.
And put it this way, for me, he's the ultimate fit for FaZe. I
think he'd be mega, yeah.
I'm
with you, though. The obvious thing that's scary is he skipped the majors.
Yeah.
So that just makes it hard to say do it.
Yeah,
innit?
which
I
think there's more to that than meets the eye. I don't believe. I can never believe anyone skipping a major on health problems. That it would have to be something mega serious. Not to say it isn't, but I don't know if there was more going on there. But whatever. But for me, device is most of the value of the team.
Yes.
Right. Stair had a really good tournament. Stair just signed a contract extension until 2027 with an organization that has been up for sale shortly after they negotiated that fucking contract. If I'm him, I'm furious. If I'm his agent, I'm furious.
I know, yeah.
But anyway, he's had a really good tournament, and he seems to be in fine fettle, and he's loving all the attention and all of that. But he's not a big brand. And if, let's say, Device did get the deal and said, I want to go, and by the way, if that then goes to the investors and they go, we can get it like $800,000 for Device, a player with health problems who might not even go to a major, if we were ever to qualify for one again, sell him. We want the money. Remember, the investors want out at Astralis. This is it. It's all, we're done. Oh. So that sale would go to the board, and I imagine would be agreed upon. So what happens if Device says, listen, guys, love you all. Love you, Jabby. Right? Love you. Right? But I can't do this no more. I can go to FaZe, play with Carrigan again. Or whichever org it would be. And I think ultimately...
Team Liquid could be a million. Yeah. Or G2, there's plenty of eligible orgs. Yeah.
Ultimately, it feels to me that the investors are desperate to sell the org with the players attached. Because obviously that does, you are getting an asset there, as well as all of the IP and everything else. So if the players start wanting to go individually, the org, the price for the org is going to plummet. And so we will have to wait and see how that pans out. But I'm being told the players are getting a little bit antsy because of the uncertain future. They've just had a good tournament, just made a final.
By the way, one thing you're alluding to, Richard, as well, is another angle that I feel like is another obvious angle that people have mistaken on the Saudi one is, when did they start just buying more teams?
Yep.
By the way, why not buy Astralis, relocate them to Riyadh? There you go. There's immediate, sports option that's going to work. You're going to make their whole brand associated with the island.
The House of Saud is filled with members who, might be interested in owning an esports team. And by the way, as it turns out, Valve are never going to make you disclose that ownership.
No.
You're never going to have to. Falcons, we still don't know who owns them. We do, but we have to pretend we don't. So Astralis could just as easily be that again. So I agree with you. And by the way, as I said, when I say Middle Eastern interest, I am not just, of course, referring to Saudi. I am referring to the entirety of the Middle East.
Well, there's the other thing. A lot of them want to copy the playbook of the Saudis, right? A lot of the Qataris, they're next in line.
I happen to know
UAE was always slightly doing some stuff anyway.
In the sheikhs in the UAE, I happen to know that some of the younger members are highly involved in gaming and would be very interested in something like this. Very interesting.
Exactly.
So, I mean, but also...
There's more hidden danger with those sheiks than a Mad Lions chef. You see what I was doing? I was working on something there, whatever.
It's fine.
Look it up.
But I mean, look, the reality there is, how would the players feel about that? Would they want to play under those conditions with that ownership? There's also a chance, by the way.
Richard, naive. Richard. I imagine they'd just go, can I just have another 5,000? Yeah, I'm actually okay with it. I feel like some of them are like that, Richard.
I'll put it this way, the Astralis guys, I had the pleasure of talking to some of the players, right? Keep in mind, listen, I don't give a fuck. You don't like something I said? Whatever. But we can still hang out and have a beer.
Yeah, of course.
You can go online and say I'm a cunt and a liar and all that, and we can still have a beer. It's all good, right? So, I had the pleasure of talking to them, and by the way, they've just their mindset now is Astralis is such a detested organization that we represent. It's like being in Millwall. Everyone hates us. We don't care, and because when you represent Astralis, everyone's gonna have an opinion on you. that's kind of what.
Oh, they're going to donk on you all the time as well. Of course.
That's where they're at. Like, well, when we win, we're so back. When we lose, we're so shit. So they've hit this galvanizing thing. I don't know if you noticed it with Stown. Stown has become a lot less timid. He's shit talking in games now. Right. Him and Donk were going back and forth at it in the final. Listen, those players have they've got a collective backbone. I think they do want to stay together. The problem I'm also being told is I think a lot of the staff that are left, the skeleton crew, the longer this goes, they're going to be cut too. There's so much salary still going out. As I said, Zipnix is still being paid by Astralis, for fuck's sake, guys. I think that's about to come to an end.
I assume very well.
Well, even with the reduction, he got such a big bag on that 5-year deal, yeah. Yeah.
No, if people don't know, as far as I know, though, even if he was on half salary, that would be like the salary that like a G2 starter gets. Like, as in his half would be the entire salary. Like, still nice money.
Yeah. So it's crazy. It's crazy how Astralis have kind of been brought to their knees like this. And really, the future is, whoever comes in and picks up Astralis, you're going to have to do an entire exercise in essentially, which is funny given that if it is a Middle Eastern owner, sports washing. But you're going to have to wash the reputation of Astralis. You're going to have to bring it back to the light and do a PR thing. That's why I laughed when apparently that calc, from NIP, he fucked up
Jonas Gunnarsson,
Jonas Gunnarsson, he fucked up one organisation, he leaves. He's in this investment group called the Continuum X group or whatever it is.
Oh,
and they're Qataris. I believe they're based in Doha. So he has got access to lots of money and he's going, maybe I'll bloody buy Astralis. Come on, you fucked up org, mate. Walk away. Stay away, mate.
Also, imagine being device he's back.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, also,
Jonas Gunnarsson's back. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. So I mean, but as far as I'm aware, I don't know how serious a deal that is. I don't know if that was something to say to get the conversation going, or whether he was ever genuinely interested. But I mean, look, ultimately, we're getting to a stage now where if a deal isn't done soon, I'm told that they want to have it all resolved before the cycle for the Budapest major. So we have this very limited window. There is a chance Astralis could shutter, and it would be temporary. It would be temporary, but at that point, the players would be available for sale. Astralis wouldn't be operational. It would be no longer meeting its contractual obligations to attend events, and it would basically be just put on a shelf until somebody wanted to resurrect the brand again, as happened to it prior to that. So, it's sad. It's sad if you're an Astralis fan. It's sad if you're a CS fan, see one of the legendary brands in the toilet. But for those of us
it's objectively bad for Counter-Strike because of the zeal of Scandinavia and particularly Denmark for this team.
I'll just say this though: we move on. The great thing about Counter-Strike is because we've got such a long history. We've got this 25-year history, of the game, and really 22 years of the esport. We've got this long history of the game where we can look at brands that were great and are no longer around anymore. And occasionally, an old brand that was great and then died, it gets brought back and it's good again. Or ultimately, CS is fine without Astralis. It's sad for the history. But I mean, put it this way. Fnatic, anyone? SK Gaming? I mean, Fnatic still technically exists, but do they? SK Gaming? Are they real still? And these were foundational brands for the space. So we always move on. We'll always survive. I mean, I hate to say it, but Falcons are going to be the world #1 team. That's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, quite literally, the team Thanos. It is inevitable that they will be the #1 team. They'll throw enough money at it until that just happens. Don't be surprised if there's even more crazy names associated with them post-major. Vitality. We're already having conversations about are Vitality the greatest team of all time. Particularly if you only look at the lens of the end of CS:GO and the start of CS, where we're at with CS2. Are they? So, do you need an Astralis? No. The reality is about esports, there will always be another Astralis. There will always be one team that rises to a level that no one else can get close to through their own hard work, their own excellence, just collecting talents together, and they'll have their time in the sun. And then, hopefully, if they're not chronically mismanaged, that time in the sun will last Many, many years, decades even. But unfortunately, this is esports, where all it takes is one moron in a room full of morons. So, that's life. But, I mean, I don't feel any...
Quite a fitting soliloquy on Nicolai Nyholm and his career.
Well, I mean, listen, he was probably the smartest guy in that room, but unfortunately that room was full of all the hand-picked idiots he hired,
Yes,
so it wasn't hard, it wasn't hard. Maybe if he'd hired a few more no men instead of a few more yes men, things could have been different, but that's life. So I don't...
By the way, though, shout out to all the Astralis fans for an entire decade telling me and Richard that because the team's winning games inside the server,
everything's
they're
fine.
making millions and millions of dollars, and they're selling loads of jerseys of the Vice. And so it's actually the opposite, and everything's amazing, and actually we're just cynical haters who don't know what we're talking about. Yeah. As we, again, just sit down, say namaste, and watch the bodies of our enemies flow down the river.
Exactly. And that's how...
TSM, EG, it's like, give me a break, mate. At this point in time, what next?
But it's like what I said. Don't judge me by my friends. Judge me by my enemies. And we put a lot of them in. But also as well, it's like the other saying as well. You don't even have to fight your enemies. Just let them fuck up. Just let them fail. On a long enough time scale, the best way to beat your enemy is to outlive them. And that's just what we've done the whole time. So, I don't feel any great sadness towards what's going on with Astralis. And I don't hold high hopes that a new owner will be bringing this organization back to life. I hope the players land right, however that might look. Certainly, if they do have new ownership after the major, I hope this ownership sticks with this team, at the very least, and gives them a chance under new ownership and new coaching and new management, whatever it might be. But ultimately, the brand, if nobody bought it, you couldn't really blame them. Like, what is Astralis really synonymous with now? The jokes, we call them Blast Astralis, we call them Astralis, Astralis. It's over. Like, they've done so many things wrong and mismanaged so many things. They are a running joke of an organization.
They're literally, the last major was 2021.
Yeah. They don't qualify for majors. They don't win tournaments. I mean, get this. The final they were just in was their first, they were in a final in 2022. I think it was like a Thunderpick final. But then if you want to go even further back and call it like not a major, but a big proper S-tier LAN tournament, it was like 2019 or something. It was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
That's how far back you have to go. That's how mismanaged this organization has been. Not to mention, you've mismanaged an organization in a country where, despite a small population, the talent pool was unbelievably huge for so many years. All you had to do was just slowly ship of Theseus, the team, the legendary core. That was all you had to do. Just replace one player. Right, goodbye. Here's a wonderful
And
retirement.
I can tell, if you ever look, one of the craziest things is, by now, they almost have signed almost every single name. It's just they did it in the wrong order at the wrong time.
They did it in the wrong
order.
Like,
for example,
we
all said when Heroic was around, why don't you get Cadian? Not later on when he was shitting CS2 and he can't hop anymore. So they did it all the wrong way. Even the Huxley one, we all said do that last year. I agree. What's a joke is, there's another thing people told us, Richard. Because of the success of the original 5 and then one or two players came in and out, because of the original core's success, people made it like, well, how can you diss the org? Because they inherited that team from someone else that was already a built team that was functionally able to potentially win the World Championship. Hadn't done it yet. All you did with your decisions after something like 2 changes was every decision you made led to where we are now. You took the greatest team ever and slowly dismantled them and did reverse GMing, anti-GMing, until you ended up at the point you were irrelevant. That's what the actual legacy of Nicolai and the Astralis will be. It won't actually, believe it or not, be the original success if you know the history of CS. They didn't do a lot of that stuff.
Exactly. So, it's one of those. Ultimately, though, I think there'll be movement after the major. I think we'll have a much clearer picture. I think the really sad thing is the lack of transparency coming out of the organization right now. I've done a report on it. HLTV have done a report on it. Dust2.dk have done a report on it. Obviously, players have acknowledged it in interviews. It's like, don't just put your mans out there to fucking go to tournaments and play under this fucking cloud. We've got Hooksy in now on a short-term contract. Let babysit our 4 players while we try and get a sale going on. Tell us what the plans are. Tell us who's interested. Tell us what the future looks like. By the way, Astralis fans are fucking annoying, but like, they're your fans. Like, you owe it to your fans. I don't owe it to the Astralis fans to tell them what's up within their fucking own organization. They'll call me a liar anyway. Well, you owe it to them as an org, but there's a total shutout and a lack of transparency, and I just think it's really fucked up. Also, as well, I mean, like, a number of sponsorships are coming to an end. You know, like I talked in my report about how the apparently the El Giganten, which is a big like tech retail outlet across Scandinavia, not just Denmark, I think they're in Sweden and Finland as well. But anyway, so that's coming to an end. You know, you should be talking about all of this stuff. Like at this point, there should be a degree of transparency where people are being told what the future of Astralis might look like. Pretty important if you're a fan of the organization. Pretty important if you're still working there. You know, so it's crazy, but I've got a few irons in the fire. There's going to be some probably more reporting about this coming soon. We will wait and see. But for now, I fully expect the organization to be sold for a pittance to owners that don't have a lot of esports experience.
Yeah, we'll circle back on that for sure.
No, sure.
So I think.
All right, Jen Psaki. I'll circle back. All right.
We'll be keeping an eye on some of the Valorant stuff, as we said too, guys. As that unfolds, if any of the match-fixing stuff comes to light.
We got the major coming up as well. So if the Valorant drama doesn't take hold and we can't do anything with that for whatever reason, listen, there's been a ton of drama around the major.
You could easily do that best of your story. That's right, hanging right there.
We didn't even talk about the Mad Lions stuff either.
But also do that too.
Richard, you've been missing out on a ton of the bullshit in esports.
I keep my eye on it. The Torble one was the fucking surprise for me. I didn't see that announced anywhere. For those who don't know, he's no longer at ESL.
He's the co-CEO, Craig Levine. He's the former CEO of ESL and was the co-CEO of the new Saudi monstrosity.
But it's so funny when you go and you look up at all of the fucking puff pieces they wrote about Torble. Like if you go and look at like all of the articles that were written about how he was this like visionary and this legendary guy, and he's fired, of course. Like, I don't know, like, when are you going to realize we're not just calling it the Death Star because we view this collective as the evil empire, but you, the peon in the Death Star, you will get force choked. That's how it works. Vader's having a bad day. No, but I'm Toro. Doesn't matter. You're getting fucking wrecked. It's Vader, for fuck's sake. It's mental.
We've got to wrap quickly.
Yeah.
I've got to do
something. Yeah, let's go.
Wrap it up.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you for our next episode in a couple of weeks. Until then, esports delenda est.